8. Advanced body language. Have you ever met someone whom you found truly repulsive? Someone who, by their mere presence, made you feel so uncomfortable and so off-kilter that if you had still been in grade school, you'd have asked your desk partner to give you a cootie shot? For all you non-East Coasters, a cootie shot is a make-believe injection given to you by a friend to protect you from catching another kid's cooties. Common symptoms of cooties include wearing flood pants, picking your nose and eating it, a love of fossils, being chosen last for sports teams, making discombobulated arm movements while speaking, and a general grossness that announces itself from at least 50 yards away. As an aside, it's strongly recommended that children who don't suffer from cooties treat those who do with the utmost compassion, because there's a 99% chance that they'll end up working for one of them when they're older. Whatever the case, I'm sure that, at some point in your life, you've all crossed paths with someone who triggered that type of visceral negative response in you. What I'd like you to do right now is think back to that very moment when you first laid eyes on that person, and that gut-wrenching feeling first washed over you. You're almost certain to find that it was not the person's words or tonality that gave you the heebie-jeebies, rather, it was their body language. There was something about the way they looked or acted or moved their body or shook your hand or failed to make eye contact or stood too close to you that set off the alarm bell that rocked you to your core. The bottom line is that nonverbal communication is 10 times more powerful than verbal communication, and it hits you with the force of a cannonball to the gut. Things like thoughts and feelings and intentions are all communicated in the way that you move your body, by your management of space and time, your posture, appearance, gestures, the way you make facial expressions and eye contact, even the way you smell. All of that gets processed in a microsecond when you are speaking to someone in person and they lay eyes on you for the first time. It's not so much that effective body language will close the deal for you. What I'm saying is ineffective body language will blow the deal for you. It stops you or doesn't allow you to get into a rapport with someone else. They are repelled by what they see. When a person lays eyes on you for the first time, in that 1/24th of a second that their judgment indicator goes up and down, they see your face and how you move, and they make a judgment. In essence, they rip you apart, process you in their brain, then put you back together and you are judged. Either you are being judged as a person who is sharp, on the ball, someone they want to do business with, or you're being judged as someone they do not want to do business with, which is to say, someone who repels them, someone who they perceive to not be an expert or to not be sharp or enthusiastic, all those things that you need to get in tight rapport. Here's a story to illustrate how repulsive negative body language can be. It happened at a seminar I gave in Sydney, Australia, one of my favorite cities in the world. I had just gone through the whole section on body language in detail, delved into all the particulars of eye contact, how you shake hands, how close you stand to somebody. I was on that last issue of how close you stand for 15 minutes, calling people on stage and allowing them to experience for themselves how awful it feels when someone invades your space bubble. So everyone is getting it, everyone is right in tune. I take a short break, and as soon as I walk off the stage, some wacky Australian comes running up to me, with his thick accent, saying, "Yo, mate, mate, mate." He gets right in my face, and I'm thinking, oh my god, the guy continues to invade my space, all the while saying, I got this thing, mate, mate, mate. As I am tuning out and covering my face to stop the spit that's being rained down on me, this guy is trying to explain his revolutionary invention called the Express Loo. Express Loo? Turns out it's a porta potty for 5-year-olds, and he wants to demonstrate, right then and there, how you use this little wooden thing. Anyway, long story short, he ends up corralling not just me but my Australian manager, my seminar promoter, and everyone else in earshot. In every case, he runs up to the person and gets right in their face, and every person walks away with the same exact feeling, which is, I don't know about his product, but I would never do business with this guy in a million years. The bottom line is this: body language is not going to get you the sale, but the wrong body language will destroy the opportunity to make a sale. The things a person will internally debate start with a very basic observation: your appearance. They'll then make a snap decision about you as a result of that. It's like we discussed in item number 1 on the syntax. They'll be debating things like how clean cut you are, if you're well dressed or not, how much jewelry you're wearing. It all goes back to judging a book by its cover. How someone dresses, how long their hair is, how they groom themselves, how they shake hands, it all makes a huge difference in how we are perceived and, for that matter, how we perceive other people. For instance, when a man wears a suit and tie, we immediately perceive him as someone who has his shit together, a person of power, so to speak. Same thing goes for a woman, although we're talking about a power suit in that case. A pantsuit or a skirt is fine, but the skirt should be no higher than just above the knee, and there should be no excessive makeup, jewelry, or perfume. Too much of these things can undermine a woman's credibility. Remember, sex sells for both men and women, but only in a Dolce & Gabbana ad or a Calvin Klein commercial, not in the workplace. If a man or woman wants to be taken seriously, they can't come to work dressed like they're going to a nightclub or coming from the gym. It sends the wrong signal and undermines their credibility. But this whole idea of wrapping your package, as the phrase goes, extends far beyond clothing and perfume. It cuts through to everything. Let's start with men's facial hair. Anything more than a closely cropped beard or mustache, and you should shave it. It gives off an untrustworthy vibe. It also hints at a lack of pride and a lack of attention to detail. Now, there are a few exceptions to this, of course, like if you're selling Harley Davidsons for a living, or if you're in a part of the world, like the Middle East, where a beard is customary. But, generally speaking, unkempt facial hair is a definite no-no. The equivalent of an unruly beard for a woman would be an extreme hairdo of some kind. It's just the sheer excess of it all. It makes you wonder, what's wrong with this person? The same thing goes for excessive jewelry. It's a major negative, both for a man and for a woman, albeit for entirely different reasons. Can you guess what's the worst thing a man can wear in terms of creating a perception of mistrust? A pinky ring, especially if it has a big fat diamond on it. There's nothing more toxic than a diamond pinky ring when it comes to inspiring mistrust. It gives off the distinct whiff of you being a Sharpie, someone who's on the make, a hustler, but one who's dressed in an expensive suit and who wears a pinky ring. That being said, there are certain circumstances where a pinky ring is actually appropriate, such as if you're the host at a casino, or if you work behind the counter of a jewelry store. It's called the law of congruency, and it fits into the same category as my Harley Davidson example. In other words, the best way to dress is in a style that's congruent with your profession. A plumber, for instance, shouldn't be wearing a suit and tie when he shows up at your door to give an estimate. Not only would it look ridiculous, but you might also take it as a sign that he's going to overcharge you because he needs to pay for more suits. Conversely, if the plumber showed up at your door looking like a total slob, then you'd probably be concerned that his work would be as sloppy as he is, and nobody wants sloppy work done on their plumbing. Based on the law of congruency, he should wear a crisp, clean uniform with his company logo on the front and his name embroidered onto the shirt. He should be holding a clipboard, and on it should be a blank estimate form, ready to be filled out. A male insurance agent should be in a suit and tie. He should wear little, if any, cologne. If he wears too much, he'll be perceived as a Sharpie. A female insurance agent should be in a power suit, with just enough makeup and jewelry to show that she takes pride in her appearance but isn't defined by it, and she should be carrying a leather briefcase, but not a Hermes one or one made from crocodile. If she likes perfume, then just a hint. This is all actually pretty easy to get once you understand the principles behind it. Think back to all of the salespeople you've met over the years who violated these rules, all the stockbrokers and insurance brokers and real estate agents and car salesmen. Doesn't it amaze you that they were ignoring these easily fixable errors? The funny thing is, at the time, you couldn't figure out exactly why you didn't trust those people, or why you didn't feel like they had your best interest at heart. But now you know, and it all seems pretty obvious in retrospect. Tools like these help you get into an unconscious rapport very quickly. But let's not jump ahead. For now, remember that getting into a rapport with someone is done primarily through tonality and body language, not your words. In terms of body language, I've talked about wrapping your package, but there's so much more. For instance, males and females respond very differently to certain types of body language, and the rules, of course, change accordingly. Let's start with spatial awareness. If you're a man selling to another man, then you want to do what's called cornering off, meaning you want to stand at a slight angle to another man, as opposed to directly in front of him. When a man faces another man, it creates for many a feeling of conflict and hostility, and it instantly takes the men out of rapport. So what you do to avoid this is you corner off with the other man, meaning you shift your body position so you're at a slight angle to him, which is the effect of immediately disarming him. If you're a man, try it yourself sometime. You'll be shocked at how much more natural it feels than standing face to face with another man. It's almost like letting air out of a balloon when you corner off. You feel an immediate release of pressure. For communication with a woman, though, it's the exact opposite. If you're a man trying to influence a woman, the woman wants you to stand directly in front of her and keep your hands above waist level where she can see them. Conversely, if you're a female trying to influence another female, then you definitely want to corner off, just like a man with another man. However, if you're trying to influence a male, then you definitely want to stand directly in front of him. Either way, what you don't want to be is one of those dreaded space invaders. Those people who invade another's space bubble. They are usually spitters too. In the Western world, the space bubble is about 2.5 to 3 feet. You want to maintain at least that much distance between yourself and your prospect when you're standing next to them. Otherwise, you run the risk of being branded a space invader. Space invading spitters make you want to take out an umbrella and use it as a spit guard. However, there's one exception to the space invader rule, and that's in Asia. People tend to stand a bit closer in Asia, marking about a half-foot difference. The Asian culture, like all unique cultures, has its own norms. As such, in general, Asians pay particular attention to body language, especially when it comes to establishing status. Take their formal bow, for instance. Who bows lower and who rises first instantly establishes the power hierarchy of the parties. For the Asian culture, bowing is the cornerstone of a successful greeting, similar to the way the handshake is to Americans. On that note, the way you shake hands says a lot more about you than you actually think. It can set you up to quickly get into a rapport with someone, or it can eliminate that possibility entirely. Have you ever had someone grab your hand and shake it like you were a rag doll? What were you thinking while you were coming out of your shoes and your hair was flopping around? Was it something along the lines of what the hell is wrong with this person? When someone starts shaking your hand like that, they might think they're making a good first impression, but they're actually not. In fact, all it does is make you wonder what they are trying to prove. Are they looking to establish power over me? Are they trying to intimidate me? The same thing goes for the opposite type of handshake, the so-called dead fish approach. This is where they extend their limp hand, which hangs like a piece of overcooked spaghetti, and just hold it there, like they don't really give a shit. We hate it because it's actually the ultimate power handshake. It's like someone saying to you, I don't care what the hell you think about me. I'm so far above you that you're not even worthy of me shaking hands with you in an appropriate manner. The best handshake for getting into a rapport with someone is called the cooperator's handshake, which is your basic neutral handshake, where you meet someone's hand head on. You're not above them or below them, you're even with them, and you return the same pressure they give to you. It's part of an overall rapport building strategy called matching, which has to do with entering a prospect's world and being where they are. More on this later. However, in this context, matching means that if someone shakes your hand firmly, then you should shake theirs just as firmly up to a point. I mean, you don't want to get into a squeeze off with somebody where they shake your hand really hard, so you try to shake theirs even harder, to which they shake yours even harder, and then you try to outdo them again. You don't want to be like, okay, big shot, I show you. You're better off letting them out squeeze you a bit, while you maintain good, solid eye contact, so they know they haven't intimidated you. Speaking of eye contact, here's an interesting fact. If you don't make eye contact, at least 72% of the time, people won't trust you. There have been detailed studies on this stuff, and 72% is the number. You can look it up online. Anything more, and you risk getting into a stare-off with somebody. The magic number is 72%. It's enough to show that you care and that you're engaged in the conversation, but it's not too much. Basically, it's not so much that you look like you have something to prove. One more thing about body language. Watch the position of your arms. Someone who crosses their arms can be communicating that they are closed to new ideas. Arm positioning is one of the most basic elements of body language, being open versus being closed, and it's obviously very easy to spot. Now, just because someone's arms are crossed doesn't mean that they're definitely closed to new ideas. They might just be cold, for all you know. Of course, if I had a choice, I'd want my prospect's arms in an open position versus closed. All things being equal, it does usually mean that someone's more open to your ideas. But I definitely wouldn't take it as the ultimate sign. When you pay attention to body language, you'll notice something fascinating. If I'm sitting in front of you with my arms crossed, and then uncross them, you will likely do the exact same thing without even realizing it. It's not some kind of GD mind trick. It's called pacing and leading. It's the next level up from matching, which is what I spoke about before when we were talking about handshakes. With pacing and leading, you're basically kicking it up a notch by pacing them, and then leading them in the direction that you want them to go. When it's done right, it's an immensely powerful strategy, and it works with both tonality and body language, active listening, and the art of matching. Before we dive more deeply into pacing and matching, let's discuss another important concept: active listening. This is a way of listening to someone that helps you actually build rapport with them. One of the greatest misconceptions about tonality and body language is that they only come into play while you're the one doing the talking. In fact, how you move your body, the facial expressions you make, how you smile, and all those little grunts and groans you make as someone's talking to you, those are all part of the technique I call active listening, and it's a powerful way to get into a rapport with someone. Let's start with something as simple as nodding your head while your prospect is speaking. When you nod your head, it shows that you get what that person is saying, that you're on the same page. The same thing goes for facial expressions, like when your prospect starts talking about something that's very important to them. You want to look straight into their eyes, with your own eyes narrowed a bit, and with your mouth crooked to the side. Then you add an occasional nod, along with a few ahas, and yups, and I got it's. Now, if that was my body language while you were explaining your problems to me, what would you think about me? Would you think that I was really listening to you? That I truly cared? Yes. There are other facial expressions too, like compressing your lips and lowering your head a bit, which implies sadness, or compressing your lips and nodding your head slowly, which implies sympathy and empathy. The master of this type of body language is President Bill Clinton. Back in his prime, he was the absolute best. He'd shake at least 100 hands a day, and he had only a split second to earn someone's trust, and he could do it every time. It seemed that from the second when he shook your hand and you fell into his magnetic zone, you got the feeling that he really cared about you, that he felt your pain. As for the audible cues, the ahas and yups, they're more effective at maintaining rapport than actually building it. They let the prospect know that you're still on the same page with them, that you get what they are saying. The audible cues are even more important when you're on the phone and don't have body language to rely on. In that case, those little grunts and groans are the only way to stay in rapport with your prospect while they're talking. When you're in person, though, you can also use matching, essentially adopting the same physiology as your prospect to slide into rapport with them. Some examples of this are the position of their body, their posture, and also their breathing rate. Even how fast they blink can be matched. Matching is an incredibly powerful tool for getting into rapport with someone, especially when you're in person and you can match both body language and tonality. But it can also be extremely effective over the phone too, if you focus on matching not just someone's tonality, but also their rate of speech and the type of words they use, including any slang. And before you think I'm saying something creepy about copying someone, let's review again. You're not copying, you're matching them. There's a big difference. Copying someone is called mirroring, meaning that you actually try to mirror your prospect's physical actions in real time as they're doing them. If they scratch their nose, then you scratch your nose, and if they cross their legs and lean back in their seat, then you cross your legs and lean back in your seat. Now, that is creepy, and it's also obvious, which is something I'm not a fan of at all. But I am a fan of matching, which means that if your prospect leans back in their seat, then you lean back in your seat too, but you do it slowly, casually, after a 5 or 10-second lag. In the end, it all goes back to likability, meaning that people want to do business with people who are basically like them, not different. You start that process by entering a prospect's world where they are, which sets you up to slide into rapport. Then you want to pace them, and then lead them in the direction that you want them to go. This is a really powerful tool when you use it right. Remember, there's pace, lead, and then there's pace, freaking lead. That's the way I teach it. Ninja style, on steroids. What I mean by this is that they don't see it coming. Don't forget that pacing is one of those things in life that needs to be done exactly right, or else it won't work. But when you actually do get it right, then watch out. Not only will it help get you into a super tight rapport with someone, it will also help you change his or her emotional state from a negative one to a positive one and increase the level of certainty. One story I like to tell about this is the time my son, Carter, came home from soccer practice absolutely furious about this kid on his team who was a major ball hog. That night, my fiancé said, "Carter is really, really upset. Why don't you go downstairs and see if you can calm him down?" Here's what I didn't do. I didn't walk downstairs, acting all soft and sympathetic, like I was trying to calm him down. I didn't drop my tone and say, "Listen, buddy, I know you're really upset right now, but you shouldn't let someone get to you like that. It's not good for you." Why? Because then he'd have gotten even madder. He'd have been like, "Don't get upset." What do you mean don't get upset? The kid's a damn ball hog. I hate him. Everyone hates him. He should be thrown off the team. And then I'd say, whoa, calm down, buddy. It's no big deal. Relax for a second. At which point he'd get even madder. He'd be like, "Bullshit. It is a big deal. I'm not gonna calm down." By trying to enter his world in a calm state when he's in an aggravated one, I'd only have aggravated him more. So, instead, I matched him. I walked in acting as pissed off and angry as he was. In fact, I acted even angrier. I said, my voice booming, "What the hell is going on, Carter? I know that bastard of a kid is a ball hog. We've got to do something about it right now. Should we call the coach and get him thrown off the team?" Then he matched me, just like I knew he would. He became just as angry as he thought I was, and he said, "Yeah, let's call the coach. Let's get him thrown off the team. That kid's a menace." To which I said, "Yeah, let's do that, buddy." And just like that, I began lowering my voice and taking on a more sympathetic tone. Then I shook my head sadly and said, "I don't know, buddy. I wonder what causes him to act that way. You think he has some emotional problems?" And then I softened my voice even more and added, "It really is a shame." And, of course, Carter started shaking his head sadly too. He said, in tones as sympathetic as mine, "Yeah, it really is, Dad. I guess I should feel bad for him. He's probably really unhappy." And just like that, he calmed down. Matching can be a way to calm anyone down, or get them excited about something, or feeling certain about something. You simply enter their world where they are, and then you pace them, and then you lead them in the direction you want them to go. Now, I didn't invent pacing and leading. It's been around since the very dawn of human communication. All great communicators do this. They do it naturally, without even thinking about it. But anyone can learn it once they know the rules. Remember, the next step in the system, which is the simultaneous gathering of intelligence and building rapport, is more about what your prospect will say to you than what you will say to your prospect. In fact, the best way to explain this to you is to go through a simple yet very powerful exercise. The time has now come for me to sell you a pen. 9. The art of prospecting. Sell me this pen? The first time I sprung this on a cocky young salesman, I was sitting behind my desk in my office at Stratton, and what I got in return was a very telling response. "You see this pen?" chirped the cocky young recruit, sounding like he just walked off a used car lot. "This is the most amazing pen money can buy. It can. Right upside down, it'll never run out of ink, it feels great in your hand. Here, check it out for yourself, tell me how great it feels." And, with that, he leaned forward in his seat and extended his arm across my desktop and offered me the same disposable pen that I'd handed to him a moment earlier to begin the test. Playing along, I grabbed the pen and rolled it around in my fingers for a few seconds until it slid into its usual writing position. "Pretty damn amazing, right?" he pressed. "It feels like a pen," I replied flatly. "That's exactly my point," he exclaimed, ignoring my lukewarm response. "That's how a great pen is supposed to feel, like it's been a part of you for years. Anyway, it's obvious that you and this pen were made for each other, so I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take 30% off the regular purchase price." But he raised his right index finger in the air, "for a moment only if you buy it right now. Otherwise, it has to go back up to the normal price. Either way, it's a really great deal, but at 30% off it's the deal of the century. What do you say?" "What do I say?" I shot back. "You mean besides the fact that you're obviously completely full of shit?" No response. The would-be Strattonite just sat there completely still, with a panic-stricken look on his face. "That wasn't a rhetorical question. You want me to ignore how completely full of shit you are, yes or no?" He slowly opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He just sat there, with his mouth hanging open. "I'll take that as a yes," I continued, deciding to let the kid off the hook. "So, putting that small detail aside for the time being, I will say that I'm not in the market for a pen right now. I don't want one, I don't need one, I barely ever use one, and in truth, if I ever do decide to go out and buy a pen, it won't be a piece of shit like this. I'd probably pick up a Mont Blanc or something." "But how could you possibly know that?" I continued, zeroing in on the main point of the exercise. "In fact, how could you know anything about me? From the second you opened up your mouth, all you did was spew out a bunch of cheap sales talk. The pen is this," I chirped, mocking his used car salesman rap. "The pen is that. The pen writes upside down. It's your long-lost brother. ... and blah, blah. Fucking blah." Even if you put aside how utterly ridiculous that sounds, did it ever occur to you to maybe ask me a few questions before you attempted to ram a pen down my throat? Like, am I even in the market for a pen? Do I have a certain price range in mind? Do I prefer one type of pen to another? I mean, think about it for a second. How could you try to sell me something without knowing the first thing about me? It completely defies logic. The would-be Strattonite nodded his head sheepishly. "So, what should I have said?" "You tell me," I shot back. Just then the door swung open and Danny walked into the office, wearing a $2,000 suit and a cynical expression. "You almost done with this?" he asked. "Almost," I replied, "but I'm actually glad you popped in. Your timing is perfect. I need you to do something for me." "What's that?" he answers cautiously. "I want you to sell me this pen," I declared, grabbing another pen off my desktop and extending my hand towards him. Danny shot me a look. "You want me to sell you a pen? Seriously?" "Yeah," I fired back. "Show the kid how it's done. Sell me this pen." "Fine, I'll sell it to you," he muttered, grabbing the pen and taking a moment to examine it. Then, all at once, he completely changed his demeanor and flashed me a warm smile and said, in a respectful tone, "So, tell me, Jordan, how long have you been in the market for a pen?" "I'm not in," I replied. "I don't use pens." "Really? Well, then you can have your lousy pen back," he snapped, tossing the pen back onto my desktop. Then he looked at the kid and said, "I don't sell things to people who don't need them. I leave that to novices, like you." While the moral of the story seems plainly obvious, there's actually a lot more going on here than meets the eye, so let me take things one at a time, starting with the obvious. Firstly, it should be crystal clear to you by now that trying to sell something to someone who doesn't need it or want it is a fool's errand and a total waste of time. A straight-line salesperson, and for that matter any professional salesperson, would never consider shooting from the hip like that. Instead, they would sift through their prospects as quickly and efficiently as possible, separating out the ones who were interested from the ones who weren't. In general sales parlance, this sifting process is referred to as qualifying a prospect, and the primary method by which a prospect gets qualified is by answering a series of questions that get posed to the prospect by the salesperson. All in all, it's a cut-and-dried, no-frills process that's utilitarian in nature and gets straight to the point. If upon answering your questions, it turns out that the prospect needs what you're selling and can afford to pay for it, then they are qualified. It's as simple as that. And then you use the straight-line system, where the word qualifying is never to be uttered under penalty of ... well, not death, but at least shame. Here, we refer to this process as straight-line prospecting, and the primary method by which we do our sifting is through gathering intelligence. Now, if you recall, I touched on this topic at the end of Chapter 2, when I presented you with a flashback from the night when I first invented the straight-line system. When you gather intelligence, I explained, you want to know everything there is to know about your prospect, so long as it's relevant to closing the sale, including Their needs, beliefs, values, hierarchy of values, meaning the relative importance of each value, their past experiences with similar products, past experiences with other salespeople, personal financial situation, insofar as affording your product, and both their primary and their secondary pain points. On top of that, what I also explained that night and what I want to re-emphasize now and dig into more deeply was the fact that your ability to gather intelligence will be directly related to how powerful a first impression you made on your prospect during those first 4 seconds. In other words, the only way that your prospects will answer your questions honestly and forthrightly is if they perceive you as being a true expert in your field, and a person whose confidence and eloquence and bottled enthusiasm has left them no doubt whatsoever that you're definitely a person worth listening to, someone who can help them achieve their goals and resolve their pain. Without that, there's simply no reason for your prospects to waste their time opening up to you or risk the embarrassment or loss of confidentiality that could result from it. So instead, they'll only give you perfunctory answers to your questions, or, more likely, they'll try to take control of the sale themselves, causing things to spiral out of control. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. A novice salesperson tries to qualify a prospect only to have the prospect answer their questions with questions of their own until the whole thing has devolved into chaos. It's a perfect example of the Iron Mike Tyson metaphor I used at the end of Chapter 2. The only difference is that instead of getting barraged by devastating hunches, you're getting barraged with devastating questions, devastating in the sense that they'll cause you to veer off the straight line and go spiraling off to Pluto, or, even worse, Uranus. Conversely, when you are in control, the barrage stops. Realizing that they are in the presence of an expert in their respective field, the prospect feels compelled to defer to you and allows you to ask as many questions as you deem necessary, without interruption. Now, this latter point is absolutely crucial because in the absence of interruptions, questions can now be asked in a manner and sequence that not only promotes a smooth, mutually productive intelligence gathering session, but also enhances your ability to build rapport. But I'm jumping ahead now. Straight line prospecting has more moving parts than any other step in the syntax, so the most effective way to teach it to you is to start with the big picture. First, let me zoom out for a moment and give you a quick overview of the relationship between marketing and sales insofar as how they work hand in hand with one another to turn a company's goods and services into cash, and how straight line prospecting serves as the bridge between the two. In essence, you have marketing on one side of the equation and sales on the other. The objective of marketing is to 1. Research the marketplace to identify the best prospective buyers, prospects, for short, for a particular product. 2. Develop a cost-effective strategy that gets the company's message in front of as many of these prospects as possible. 3. Embed the message with some sort of offer or hook or call to action that prompts as many of these prospects as possible to enter the company's sales funnel. 4. Coordinate with the sales department to ensure a seamless handoff of the funnel so prospects can be turned into customers. Now, in today's world, there are 2 types of marketing. First, we have offline marketing, which includes everything that takes place off the internet, TV and radio ads, newspaper ads, magazine ads, billboard ads, direct mail, telemarketing, network marketing, educational marketing, door knocking, campaigns, etc. And second, we have online marketing, which includes everything that takes place on the internet: Google ads, Facebook ads, Twitter ads, YouTube ads, banner ads, landing pages, opt-ins, retargeting campaigns, email blasts, affiliate marketing, SEO campaigns, and much, much more. Now, as I said, whichever marketing modality a company decides to use, the ultimate objective is always the same: to bring as many qualified buyers as possible into the company's sales funnel so they can then be handed off to the sales department and turned into customers. Pretty straightforward, right? Actually, not quite. You see, no matter how carefully you target your marketing campaign, there is no possible way that every prospect who enters your sales funnel will end up being a qualified buyer. In fact, in most cases, if even half of those prospects turn out to be qualified buyers, then you're doing great. In essence, this is what straight line prospecting is all about: sifting through prospects who enter your sales funnel to eliminate the ones who don't qualify to buy your product, thereby avoiding wasting your time making a full-blown sales presentation to them. To that end, in any given marketing campaign, there are 4 categories of buyers who will enter your sales funnel. We call these the 4 buying archetypes. The first archetype is called buyers in heat. These are basically your best, most motivated buyers. These prospects want your product, need your product, can benefit from your product, can afford your product, and most importantly, they are prepared to make a buying decision right now. Like all legitimate buyers, buyers in heat have a certain pain they're looking to resolve. However, what separates them from the rest of the pack is that they've already made the decision to do something about it now. In other words, they're done waiting, they're ready to act. They've gotten to the point where they are simply no longer willing to tolerate the pain that comes from an unresolved need, so they've decided to get proactive. The only downside to this group of ready-made buyers is that there aren't that many of them. Depending on what industry you're in and how targeted your marketing campaign was, you'll find that somewhere between 10 and 20% of the total prospects that enter your sales funnel will fall into this category. The rest will be spread among the other three. The second buying archetype is called buyers in power. These are your second best group of buyers. The primary difference between the first two archetypes is that buyers in power aren't consciously feeling any major pain from their unfilled need, which causes them to lack the same level of urgency as buyers in heat. In other words, while buyers in power have every intention of buying the type of product you're selling, their lack of urgency makes them feel like they're in a position of power, so they're not going to pull the trigger until they're done shopping around and have made themselves absolutely certain that they've found the best solution to their problem. Nonetheless, these are still excellent prospects, and there are also a heck of a lot more of them than buyers in heat. On average, somewhere between 30 and 40% of the total prospects that enter your sales funnel will end up falling into this category. At the end of the day, it's the prospects from these two categories, buyers in heat and buyers in power, who will make it past the intelligence gathering phase and continue their journey down the straight line. The prospects from the remaining two buying archetypes need to be weeded out as quickly as possible, especially those who fall into the third archetype, the dreaded looky-loos. Also known as tire kickers, the looky-loos are the most dangerous prospects that will enter your sales funnel. What makes them so destructive is that they disguise themselves as buyers in power, acting as if they're genuinely interested in buying your product while they actually have no intention of doing so. In consequence, they continue their journey down the straight line, as opposed to getting weeded out during the intelligence gathering phase as they're supposed to be. The resulting damage occurs on two levels. First, and most obviously, it causes a massive amount of time to be wasted as you end up making full-blown sales presentations to prospects who have no intention of buying. And second, and even more damaging, is the confusion and negativity it creates as a novice salesperson tries to figure out why their closing rate is so low. Is there something wrong with me? The salesperson wonders. Is it their pitch? Is the salesperson not making a strong enough logical case, emotional case? Or maybe the salesperson is screwing up at the very end, during the objection handling phase. After all, the prospects remain interested the whole way through, giving the salesperson buy signal after buy signal to the very end, and then they don't buy. You see the problem here? Having no idea that between 30 and 40% of their sales funnel is filled with professional time wasters, disguised as buyers in power, salespeople end up spending the bulk of their time making sales presentations to prospects who have no intention of buying. The good news is that identifying them isn't very difficult. There are 4 telltale signs that will alert you to the fact that you're having your time wasted by a looky-loo. 1. They tend to ask lots of questions that they seem to already know the answers to. 2. They make it a point to kick the tires of whatever it is you're selling, almost to the point of over-kicking them. 3. They let out a large number of oohs and ahs and yups to reinforce the sense that they're genuinely interested. 4. When asked about their finances, they either become boisterously overconfident or unnecessarily vague. Again, I can't overestimate the importance of being hypervigilant when it comes to identifying and weeding out the looky-loos as quickly as possible. You'll end up avoiding a lot of pain over the long run. Now, this takes us to the fourth and final buying archetype, which I refer to as the mistakes, or the people who were dragged there. In essence, these are people who never belonged in your sales funnel in the first place. Either they clicked on the wrong website, showed up at your place of business by mistake, or they were simply dragged into your sales funnel by someone else. Whatever the case, the common thread among all the mistakes is that they had no desire to enter your sales funnel in the first place, so you have basically no chance of closing them. So, in summary, the 3 main goals of straight line prospecting are as follows. 1. Identify the looky-loos and the mistakes and remove them from your sales funnel as quickly as possible. 2. Gather the necessary intelligence from the buyers in heat and the buyers in power, and then continue moving them down the straight line towards the close. 3. Begin the process of turning the buyers in power into buyers in heat by amplifying their pain. Now, insofar as number 3 is concerned, there's a lot more to this concept than it makes sense to discuss now, so let me circle back to it when we get to the next chapter, which covers the 10 core distinctions of straight line prospecting. In fact, let's dive into that chapter right now. It's time to take you from the theory of straight line prospecting to the real world application of it. The next chapter will show you precisely how you get there. 10. The 10 rules of straight line prospecting. When you're properly engaging in the process of straight line prospecting, you're doing each of the following 4 things. 1. You're sifting through the prospects in your sales funnel by asking them a series of strategically prepared questions. 2. You're using these questions to not only gather intelligence, but also to separate the buyers in heat and buyers in power from the looky-loos and the mistakes. 3. You're continuing to gather intelligence from the buyers in heat and buyers in power, while eliminating the looky-loos and mistakes from your sales funnel as quickly as possible. 4. You're transitioning the buyers in heat and the buyers in power to the next step in the syntax so they can continue their journey down the straight line. Insofar as the 10 rules of prospecting are concerned, they are meant to provide you with everything you'll need to create a practical blueprint for gathering intelligence in your industry. Now, as you go through each rule, you should keep relating it back to your own situation, making whatever changes are needed to your current method of prospecting. To that end, if you have a prospecting script or a list of intelligence gathering questions, then you should have those in front of you before we begin. So, grab those now, and let's get started. Rule number 1. You are a sifter, not an alchemist. Imagine yourself as one of those old-fashioned gold prospectors who kneels at the edge of a stream with your trusty tin pan, sifting through thousands of gallons of water as you patiently wait for that one nugget of gold to drop into your pan. It's a sight that we've all seen countless times, both in the movies and on TV. An old miner, with his scraggly beard, playing the waiting game by the edge of a stream. He'll wait there as long as he has to, knowing full well that sooner or later a nugget of gold will present itself. However, what he's not waiting for is for the water itself to turn into gold. That's a job for an alchemist, not a prospector. You see my point? Water is water and gold is gold. They're different elements that don't magically convert into one another any more than looky-loos and mistakes convert into buyers and heater buyers in power. That's why a salesperson has to become an expert sifter, not an alchemist. There's simply no two ways about it. Rule number 2. Always ask for permission to ask questions. As easy as this distinction is to execute, virtually all untrained salespeople ignore it, simply because they are unaware of how negatively it will impact their ability to get into rapport. Plain and simple, unless you ask for permission to ask questions, you run an extremely high risk of being perceived as the Grand Inquisitor type instead of a trusted advisor, and the Grand Inquisitor type does not care about you, nor are they just like you, which are the two driving forces behind getting into rapport. However, the good news here is that all you have to do to avoid this outcome is remember always to ask for permission to ask questions. It's as simple as that. Below are a few sample language patterns that get straight to the point and have been proven to work. John, just a couple of quick questions, so I don't waste your time. John, let me just ask you a couple of quick questions, so I can best serve you. John, let me ask you just a couple of quick questions, so I can see exactly what your needs are. Any one of the above examples will set you up for a non-confrontational intelligence gathering session that promotes the building of rapport. In addition, I want you to notice how I use the word so in the second half of each of the 3 examples. In this context, we refer to the word so as a justifier, because it justifies your need to ask the prospect questions, as opposed to doing it out of curiosity or nosiness. In essence, in order to do your job correctly, there are certain things that you need to know in your capacity as an expert. By using a justifier, you can get that point across to your prospect loud and clear, and it paves the way for an even more productive intelligence gathering session. Rule number 3. You must always use a script. I'm only going to touch on this rule briefly, as the entire next chapter is dedicated to the creation of scripts and how they roll up into one cohesive presentation. One of the key reasons why you want to always use a script for prospecting is that each industry has its own unique set of questions that need to be asked in a certain order. If you try to wing it as opposed to having all your questions mapped out in advance in precisely the right order, then the chances of you remembering all the questions or asking them all in the right order is slim to none, and each mistake you make will have a negative impact on your ability to gather intelligence. Another major benefit of using a prospecting script is that since you already know what words you're going to say, your conscious mind is freed up to focus on applying the right tonality to your words, as well as on what your prospect is communicating back to you. Are there any clues in their facial expression, or their tone of voice, or their general body language? Again, I'm going to be digging into this in much greater detail in the following chapter, so let's move on. Rule number 4. Go from less invasive questions to more invasive questions. By asking non-invasive questions first, you give yourself the opportunity to start building rapport by actively listening to your prospect's answers. It's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion. Each non-invasive question that your prospect answers creates an even tighter state of rapport, which paves the way for you to ask successively more invasive questions. Let me quickly show you how the wrong approach looks, using a stockbroker gathering intelligence from a wealthy prospect as an example. After a brief introduction, during which the broker took control of the sale by establishing himself as an expert, he transitioned to the intelligence gathering phase by asking for permission to ask questions, using the reasonable man tonality, to which the prospect replied, "Sure, go ahead," which is how you can expect virtually every prospect to respond, provided that you've established yourself as an expert and ask for permission to ask questions using the correct tonality. And now comes the broker's first question, which is, "So, tell me, John, how much money are you liquid for right now, including both your personal bank accounts and your different brokerage accounts around Wall Street? Oh, by the way, please include any mutual funds you have as well, as long as you can liquidate them within 7 days." "Excuse me?" snaps the prospect in a tone of incredulity. "I don't even know you. Why on earth would I answer that?" "Oh, I'm sorry," says the broker, in an apologetic tone. "Let me start with something else. What was your annual income last year, including any capital gains?" No response. "Just a ballpark," the broker adds, trying to prod the prospect into answering. "You can round." Click. "Hello?" says the broker to an empty telephone line. "Are you still there, John? Hello ... hello?" And just like that, the sale is over before it even started. With a huff and a puff, the prospect smashed the phone down in the broker's ear and had every justification to do it. After all, the broker had simply not earned the right to ask him those types of invasive questions yet. Not only did he lack the required level of trust and rapport, but he also lacked the benefit of having an intangible aspect of human communication on his side, namely, the mitigating effect of desensitization. By way of definition, psychologists describe desensitization as a diminished emotional response to an adverse stimuli after repeated exposure to it. In layman's terms, it simply means that we have a tendency to quickly get used to things. For example, something that you would normally find wholly offensive, like being asked an invasive question by someone who you hardly know, will barely cause you to raise an eyebrow after just a few minutes of desensitization, and that's especially true when it comes to someone gathering intelligence from you as a result of the lubricating effect that comes from suddenly finding yourself in rapport with the person asking the questions. Again, I can't overestimate how crucial this distinction is to ensuring a successful outcome to an intelligence gathering session. Ignore it at your own peril. Rule number 5, ask each question using the right tonality. In Chapter 11, which details how to make a sales presentation, I will provide you with a list of big picture questions that have been proven to work in any industry, along with their accompanying tonalities. For now, what you need to understand is that each prospecting question will have its own best tonality, which maximizes the chance of your prospect giving you the most forthright answer, while also ensuring that you maintain rapport with them in the process. Conversely, if you apply the wrong tonality to your question, then your prospect will answer it in a perfunctory manner at best, and while you might not completely break rapport, you will certainly bring the level down a few notches. Here's a quick example. Let's say you're a life insurance salesman, and you're at the home of a prospect, trying to close him on a whole life policy. Given that life insurance is a fear-based sale, it's especially crucial that your intelligence gathering effort not only uncovers his primary pain point but also amplifies it, as this will be the key to closing the sale. To that end, here's an example of an invasive question you might ask to begin the process of ferreting out the source of his pain. So, John, all things considered, what's your biggest fear right now with not having a life insurance policy in place? What's really keeping you up at night? Now, imagine if you attached a callous, almost aggressive tone to those words, as if you were chastising him for being so foolish and irresponsible for not having adequate life insurance coverage in place. It would be like you were saying to him, so what's your greatest fear, John? Tell me, come on, let's go, tell me. Now, of course, you didn't actually say those extra words, tell me, come on, let's go, tell me, but that's precisely what he heard as a result of tonality's ability to add extra words onto our communications, and what he also heard was his own inner monologue saying, this guy is a total asshole, he doesn't care about me, he doesn't feel my pain, and he's not sympathetic to my plight. Alternatively, if you had used the I care tonality, along with I feel your pain, then the extra words your prospect would have heard would have said, wow, this guy really cares about me, he really genuinely wants to know. So, again, if you attach the wrong tonality to your question, it will cause you to break rapport with your prospect while also eating away at your credibility as an expert. Conversely, if you attach the right tonality to your question, it will cause an increase in the level of rapport while also reinforcing your position as an expert. Remember, this applies to every question you ask during the intelligence gathering phase. There are no free questions. Rule number 6, use the correct body language as the prospect responds. This too relates back to what I covered in the previous chapter when I went through the body language principle of active listening, as well as distinction number 4 of this chapter, where your ability to actively listen as your client answers your questions will serve as the linchpin strategy for building rapport as you move through the intelligence gathering process, with your goal being to hit a high note as you prepare to transition into the main body of your sales presentation. In consequence, you need to be absolutely vigilant about following all the active listening rules that I laid out for you in Chapter 8 starting on page 132. Below is an abbreviated list of the active listening techniques that you'll most frequently use during the intelligence gathering phase. 1. Nodding your head while your prospect is speaking. This shows that you understand what they are saying and that you're on the same page as them. 2. Narrowing your eyes and compressing your lips while nodding your head slowly when your prospect is disclosing an issue that's very important to them. 3. Narrowing your eyes even more while compressing your lips more intensely if the above topic deals with one of the prospect's pain points. In addition, you'll continue to nod your head slowly while letting out the appropriate oohs and ahs to show that you actually feel your prospect's pain. 4. Leaning forward when you ask an emotionally charged question, and then continuing to lean forward while your prospect answers, while also using the active listening techniques I laid out above in number 3. 5. Leaning back when you ask a question that's grounded in logic, and continue to lean back and nod your head in understanding and scratch your chin thoughtfully while your prospect answers. While the above list assumes that the sales encounter takes place in person, for many of you that will not always be the case. So when the encounter takes place over the phone, your active listening will be distilled down to the various oohs and ahs and ahas and yups that you let out as your prospect responds to your questions. This will let the prospect know that you're still on the same page as them, and that you get what they are saying. Rule number 7. always follow a logical path. The human brain is extraordinarily adept at analyzing a series of questions and determining whether or not they're being asked in a logical order. If they're not, then it will serve as a major red flag that the person who's asking them is not an expert in their field. For example, imagine being on the receiving end of the following series of intelligence-gathering questions asked in exactly this order. 1. What part of town do you live in? 2. Are you married or single? 3. What kind of work do you do? 4. How long have you been living here? 5. Do you have any children? 6. What do you like most about your neighborhood? 7. Are you self-employed or do you work for someone else? Frankly speaking, if you've been asked these questions in an actual sales setting, by the time you reach question number 4, your internal monologue would have been raging away a mile a minute, saying things like, what the hell is wrong with this guy? He seemed like an expert at first, but he obviously has no idea what he's talking about. Let's get this nonsense over as quickly as possible and find a real expert, not an imposter like this guy. By the way, if you think I'm exaggerating, I'm not. The good news, though, is that this entire issue is easily avoided. All you need to do is take the time to engage in a little strategic preparation, which, in this particular case, means making a complete list of your prospecting questions, and then keep arranging them in different orders until you hit on the one that stands out as the most logical. Trust me when I say that the right order will be plainly obvious to you. This will be easy pickings now that I've raised your level of awareness. In fact, let's do a quick practice run with this right now, using the list of 7 questions beginning on the previous page. If you recall, I purposely arranged them so they be out of logical sequence. What I want you to do now is take out a pen and paper, or you can use your smartphone or computer and make a list of all 7 questions in their most logical sequence. Once you've done that, you can find the correct order below. 1. What part of town do you live in? 2. How long have you been living there? 3. What do you like most about your neighborhood? 4. Are you married or single? 5. Do you have any children? 6. What kind of work do you do? 7. Are you self-employed or do you work for someone else? Notice how these questions make perfect sense in this order. In fact, not only does each question pave the way for the ones that come after it, but also each of your prospects' responses will begin to paint a picture of a certain aspect of their life that you can fill in with more and more detail by asking follow-up questions based on their responses. Just make sure that when you ask your follow-up questions you exhaust each line of questioning before you move on to the next one, and don't ping-pong back and forth between your prepared questions and your follow-up questions, as it will break the logical flow. Remember, at this point in the sale, it's extremely rare that any one mistake will be damaging enough to cause a one-punch knockout. Rather, it will be like death from 1,000 cuts. In other words, each one of your mistakes are incongruencies, whether it's asking a question out of the logical sequence, attaching the wrong tonality to it, getting overly invasive before you've earned the right to, or forgetting to actively listen to your prospect's responses will slowly but surely eat away at the rapport you've worked so hard to create, while also undermining your position as an expert, until you reach the point where one more mistake is enough to act as the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back. Rule number 8, make mental notes, don't resolve their pain. When you're qualifying a prospect, all you should be doing is asking questions and making mental notes based on their responses. You do not want to try to resolve their pain at this point. In fact, if anything, you want to amplify that pain. Remember, pain serves as a warning signal that there's something wrong in their life, something that they need to take action to fix. So if you take them out of pain before you make your presentation, then you're actually doing them a huge disservice. In other words, when a prospect reveals their pain to you, you don't want to jump the gun and say, oh great, there's no need to worry now, my product is going to take away all your pain, so there's no longer any reason to feel bad anymore. Just sit back and relax while I explain everything to you. If you do that, then you're shooting yourself in the foot in a massive way. You see, by applying a temporary bomb to their pain, you're transforming your prospect from being a buyer in heat to being a buyer in power, which is the exact opposite of what you want to be doing. Instead, you want to amplify their pain by asking them a series of follow-up questions that actually future pace it, forcing them to experience the reality of being in even greater pain at some point down the road if they don't take action now to resolve it. This will ensure that your prospect not only understands the ramifications of not taking action to resolve their pain, but also feels those ramifications in their gut. Rule number 9, always end with a powerful transition. The purpose of a transition is to move those prospects who are going to continue their journey down the straight line to the next step in the sales process, which is when you make your straight line sales presentation. In addition, this is also where you're going to eliminate the looky-loos and the mistakes, as well as any buyers in heat and buyers in power who aren't quite right for your product. You see, the simple fact is that not every buyer in power and buyer in heat should be taken farther down the straight line. For example, if your product is not a good fit for them, then you have a moral obligation to tell them that, to explain that you can't help them and that they really shouldn't be buying. You should say something along the lines of, well, John, based on everything you just told me, this program isn't a particularly good fit for you. I'm really sorry about that, but I don't want to sell you something that you're not going to be thrilled with. And if you happen to know of another company that can help them, then you should direct them there. Of course, you're not morally obligated to do this, but it's definitely the right thing to do. Remember, today's unqualified prospect can be tomorrow's perfectly qualified prospect, and the amount of goodwill you establish by sending them somewhere else is incalculable. In fact, I've had situations where I did just that, and before I could even leave the table, the prospects started calling their friends to try to drum up business for me, and I've also had situations where a year later I got a call out of the blue from someone I did that for, and now that person was ready to buy. Now let's talk about the other side of the equation, where after gathering all the necessary intelligence, you're 100% certain that your product can resolve your prospects' pain and improve the quality of their life. In that case, you would use a simple transition like this. Well, John, based on everything you just said to me, this program is definitely a perfect fit for you. Let me tell you why ... Or you could substitute the word product for program, or use the actual name of either one. In that case, it would sound like this. Well, John, based on everything you just said to me, the 64-inch Samsung is definitely the perfect fit for you. Let me tell you why ... And from there, you'll go directly into the main body of your sales presentation. Rule number 10. Stay on the straight line, don't go spiraling off to Pluto. In 2009, I was hired by a London-based seminar provider to do a private sales training for the company's 20 young salesmen who were struggling so badly that they could barely close a door. When I was maybe halfway through the first day of training, I passed by one of the salesman's desks and heard him going off on some crazy tangent about duck hunting in the marshes of southern England. As it turned out, the subject of duck hunting had been raised by his prospect in response to a standard intelligence gathering question that the salesman had asked him a few minutes earlier, a standard question that had absolutely nothing to do with shooting a bunch of innocent ducks. The question he'd asked was, "What kind of work are you currently doing?" And to be clear, the prospect didn't start his response by talking about duck hunting. Rather, he answered the question that he was asked, telling the salesman that he was mid-level manager at a clothing manufacturer in Kent. But then, rather than leaving it at that, the prospect decided to spiral off to Pluto by segueing into a long drawn-out story about how the duck hunting in the Kent marshes was the best in all of England. In truth, these sorts of compound answers, where the prospect starts by answering your question and then finishes by spiraling off to Pluto, are very common during the intelligence gathering phase and are in no way problematic. What is problematic, however, is the disingenuous way in which the salesman handled it. "Oh my God," he exclaimed, as if he were completely bowled over. "What a coincidence this is. I love duck hunting too. What are the odds? I mean, for you and me to both love duck hunting? I can't even begin to tell you how much ... And on the salesman went, going back and forth with his prospect for 15 minutes, spewing out a bunch of nonsense about the exhilaration one gets from taking potshots at a bunch of innocent ducks who can't shoot back. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not against duck hunting any more than I'm for it, although I would like to think that if you're going to take the life of an unsuspecting duck, you'd at least have the common courtesy to then base the little guy in orange sauce and make him into a gourmet meal. Either way, what's far more important is that you understand just how misguided the salesman's strategy was. Let me explain what I mean. A moment after the salesman slammed his phone down in defeat, he turned to me and muttered, "Damn it, I was so close. I can't believe I let that one slip away." "No, you weren't close," I replied flatly. "You never had a shot. You were too busy talking about duck hunting. I assume you made all that shit up, right? I mean, you don't exactly strike me as the duck hunting type. Where are you from?" "India." "Sri Lanka," he replied meekly, looking down at the floor to avoid making eye contact. "Sri Lanka. Not exactly the world's duck hunting capital, now is it?" I said with a chuckle. "Anyway, why did you lie to the guy like that? What did you think you were going to accomplish?" "I was trying to build rapport," he said defensively, "like you said this morning." "Wow, lesson learned," I said to myself. That's the last time I stress how important something is without also explaining how to actually do it. "Fair enough," I said to the salesman. "This one's on me. But, for the record, what you just did is the exact opposite of what I meant." 10 minutes later, I had the entire sales force back in the training room, and I was standing before my trusty whiteboard, filling in the blanks from my morning training session. "Let me tell you a little something about rapport," I said confidently. "It is by far the single most misunderstood word in the English language. In fact, what most people think constitutes rapport is actually repulsive, meaning it repels people instead of attracting them, which is the exact opposite of what you're trying to accomplish with rapport in the first place. Now, after listening to a bunch of your sales pitches this morning, it's obvious that you guys think that if you pretend to like whatever your prospect likes, you will end up getting into rapport with him." I paused for a moment to let my words hang in the air. Then I plowed on. "Bullshit," I sputtered. "There's no rapport there. People are far more skeptical than they used to be, and they're constantly on the lookout for that sort of bullshit. And make no mistake, if your prospect has even the slightest inkling that you're trying to pull something like that, then any chance you had of closing the sale completely evaporates. Make sense to everyone?" All 20 salesmen nodded their heads in unison. Excellent. Now, in addition to that, what you're also doing is sending a subliminal message to your prospect that you're not really an expert. You see, experts are far too busy to waste time talking about things that aren't germane to the prospect's outcome. Their services are in demand, and an expert's time is his most valuable commodity. Also, experts are qualifying a prospect. They ask their questions in a very specific way, one that's both logical and intuitive, and they don't go off on tangents. That's what a novice does. They tend to be all over the place, and they're constantly going off to Pluto. Now, again, genuine rapport is based on two things. First, that you care, meaning that you're not just looking to make a commission. You want to help your prospect fill his needs and resolve his pain. Basically, you have his best interest at heart as opposed to your own. And second, that you're just like him, meaning that human beings want to associate with people who are just like them versus the exact opposite of them. Let me give you a quick example. You wouldn't go check out a country club to see if you want to join, and then come home to your wife and say, "Guess what, honey? I went to this really cool country club today. There wasn't a single soul there who was anything like me. They all had different politics, different religions, different interests. All in all, I didn't have a single thing in common with any of them, so I joined." Now, if you did that, your wife would look at you like you were out of your mind. However, your decision would have made perfect sense to her if you'd said, "I went to this really cool club today. The people there were just like us. They all shared our politics, our religious beliefs, our family values, and almost all of them play tennis. So I joined." The bottom line is this: we don't associate with other people based on our differences, we associate based on our commonalities. However, that being said, this is precisely where you guys are all making the classic mistake. You see, the way you think that you're supposed to accomplish this is by playing the pretend game, like, if he loves fishing, then you love fishing, and if he loves duck hunting, then you love duck hunting, and if he loves going on safaris, then you love going on safaris, and on and on. Now, I'll get into the ethical ramifications of this later, insofar as how totally unacceptable it is for you guys to be lying through your teeth like that, but for now, let me repeat what I just said to you guys about the efficacy of doing this. Specifically, that it's a complete bunch of bullshit. There's no rapport there. That's actually repulsive to people. In fact, I'll give you a real-world example, using something I heard one of you guys rambling about this morning, and with that, I spent the next minutes giving the group a comical account of the duck hunting fiasco I'd been subjected to that morning, in order to keep the mood light. When I got to the point in the story where the prospect had just spiraled off to Pluto, I began mercilessly poking fun at the salesman for his decision to join his prospect there, spending over 15 minutes orbiting that barren rock as the two of them went back and forth about the frickin' wonders of duck hunting. Then, changing to a more serious tone, I added, but still, in his defense, it wasn't like he could just cut his prospect off in mid-sentence when he started spewing out all that duck hunting nonsense. And by the way, guys, I'm just using his call as an example. The same thing applies to all of you. When your prospect starts to spiral off to Pluto, you're not going to say, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now, listen, pal, I'm an expert in my field, and as an expert, I don't have time to listen to your worthless drivel about the price of tea in China. So, I want you to stop rambling about this nonsense and answer my questions directly, so we stay on the straight line. If you do that, it's not going to go over very well with your prospect, now will it? In fact, in that scenario, you'll end up destroying whatever rapport you've built up, and you might as well end the conversation there. Instead, what you want to do in that situation is actually let your prospect spiral off to Pluto while you really step up your active listening, so he knows that you understand exactly what he's talking about, and that you find it exciting and interesting. Of course, you're not going to actually say those words, but your tonality and body language will be more than enough to carry the day. Then, after he's finally done orbiting Pluto, all you need to say is something along the lines of, "Wow, that's totally cool. It sounds really interesting. I can see why you feel that way. Now, as far as your goal for learning how to trade currencies goes, and then you lead him back to the straight line and pick up right where you left off by asking him the next question on your list. That's how you maintain control of the sale and build massive rapport at the same time. Make sense? Everyone? Raise your hands and say yes if it does." The entire sales force raised their hands on cue and let out a collective yes. "Okay, great," I continued. "The key here is that you always remember that rapport is not a constant. It goes up and down throughout the sale, depending on the following two things. 1. How your prospect thinks and feels about the last point you made, and 2. His belief as to whether or not you are on the same page with him in regards to that point. To that end, if he feels positively about the last thing you said, then the level of rapport increases, and if he feels negatively about it, then the level of rapport decreases. Likewise, if he believes that you are on the same page with him, then the level of rapport increases, and if he believes that you are not on the same page with him, then the level of rapport decreases. Now, guys, the reason that this is so absolutely crucial is because you can't close a sale while you're out of rapport with your prospect. It's that simple. So, if at any moment you sense that you're falling out of rapport with your prospect, then you need to stop, regroup, and make a conscious effort to get back Into rapport, using the active listening protocol I laid out for you, along with 2 specific tonalities I went through this morning. I care, I really want to know, and I feel your pain. In essence, guys, building rapport is an ongoing process. It's not like you get into rapport with someone and you can say to yourself, okay, check, now that I've got that out of the way, I can start acting like an asshole again. That's not going to go over very well. The simple fact is that you need to be actively building rapport throughout the entire sale, 100% of the time, without ever letting your guard down. Any questions? Are you going to talk about scripts? Asked one of the salesmen. Indeed I am, I replied. Right now. 11. The art and science of making world-class sales presentations. While revealing the secret to charisma might seem an odd way to begin a chapter on sales presentations, if you give me the benefit of the doubt for the next few pages, you'll quickly see that it's not. Let me explain why. Firstly, when we speak of charisma as it relates to sales, we are talking about that special charm or appeal that certain salespeople seem to possess that allows them to effortlessly slide into rapport with their prospects. It's an attractive force that's almost magnetic in nature, and its impact can be felt in a matter of seconds. A perfect example of this would be President Bill Clinton, who back in his heyday was not only one of the greatest salesmen in political history, but also a GD master in the art of charisma. Whether you loved him or hated him, to see him on the campaign trail was like attending a master class in charisma's practical application. Moving from town to town, he would shake hands with over 1,000 voters a day, having only an instant to connect with each of them, yet somehow, when it was finally your turn and he locked eyes with you and offered you that sympathetic smile and a few choice words, you got an overwhelming sense that not only did he care about you, but that he also understood you and felt your pain. At the end of the day, it's these 3 distinctions: he cares about me, he understands me, and he feels my pain that serve as the very foundation on which all rapport is built, and they come naturally to those who possess massive charisma. In fact, the power of charisma is so vital to a salesperson's success that it's almost impossible to find even a single top producer who doesn't possess it in massive quantities. Working like motor oil in a car engine, it lubricates each step of the sales process while setting the stage for a healthy collaboration based on trust and respect and esprit de corps. But what about all the people who don't possess an abundance of charisma? What are they supposed to do? Are they screwed, as the phrase goes, meaning charisma is an inborn personality trait that each of us possesses at a fixed level, or is charisma a learnable skill that can be mastered through practice? Thankfully, the answer is the latter. In fact, not only is charisma an entirely learnable skill, but it also possesses that highly coveted good enough factor, meaning all you have to do is become reasonably proficient and you'll start seeing the benefits straight away. Now, insofar as just how you go about doing that, I've tested a number of different strategies over the years, and I've found that the quickest way to teach this to someone is to break charisma down into its 3 core components and teach them one at a time. So, let's do that right now, starting with charisma's first component, which is the effective use of tonality, meaning that you sound so good when you speak that you keep people hanging on your every word as opposed to them tuning out or dividing their attention among other people in the room. The second component of charisma is the targeted use of body language, meaning you're being hypervigilant about applying all 10 body language principles with a heavy emphasis on active listening to communicate an extraordinary level of attentiveness and empathy. And charisma's third component, which is typically the toughest one of all for most people, is not saying stupid shit. In fact, I've seen the same scenario unfold 1,000 times. A salesperson is saying intelligent things for the first 4 or 5 minutes of the encounter and is in complete control of the sale. Then, things start to drag on a bit, and the salesperson begins running out of intelligent things to say, and suddenly, bam, the stupid shit starts flowing out of their mouth like it just bubbled up from out of the Brooklyn sewer system. Even worse, once it starts flowing, it keeps getting stupider and stupider with each passing moment until it reaches a point of such undeniable stupidity that an alarm goes off inside the prospect's mind, flashing novice alert, at which point any chance of closing the sale is gone. After all, if there's one thing all your prospects will have in common, it's that they all know what experts should look like and sound like, and they also know what they don't look and sound like. Experts mostly say smart shit, they occasionally say bullshit, and at times, they even shoot the shit, but the one thing they don't say is stupid shit. That esteemed honor is reserved for novices, or more accurately, for those who sound like novices. You see, in the world of sales, there's a massive difference between being an expert and sounding like one, and, for better or worse, it's the latter that gets you paid. To that end, one of the true beauties of the straight line system is that it allows any salesperson, whether they're a stone-cold rookie or a world-class expert, to deliver a flawless sales presentation on a consistent basis, no matter how long the encounter drags on, and the way the system accomplishes that can be summed up in one word: scripts. That's right, scripts. But not just any scripts. I'm talking about straight-line scripts, or, more accurately, a series of straight-line scripts that work together as a cohesive unit and run the entire length of the sales presentation. So, what is a straight-line script? In short, a straight-line script is the well-thought-out essence of the perfect sale. In other words, imagine taking the 10 best sales presentations that you've ever made for a particular product and going through each one of them line by line, with an eye on choosing the best passages from each and then combining them into one ultra-perfect presentation that will become your template for all sales encounters going forward. That's what I mean by a straight line script. It's basically all of your best sales lines, arranged in exactly the right order, starting with those all-important first 4 seconds and continuing on straight through to the end, at which point your prospect will either buy or you will end the sales encounter in a respectful way. In other words, if the prospect chooses not to buy, then you're not going to berate them or put undue pressure on them or slam the phone down in their ear or walk around muttering curses under your breath. Instead, you're going to end the call in an amicable, respectful way by saying something along the lines of, "Thanks for your time, Mr. Smith. Have a nice day." Now, in terms of the literally countless benefits created by a well-written straight line script, I could spend 2 or 3 chapters writing about that alone. Let's go through the most important benefits first, with a focus on how they work in conjunction with the rest of the straight line system to get you to the point where you can close anyone who's closable. One, I know this is an obvious one, but I had to include the crucial benefit of the sale being able to drag on for as long as necessary, without there being the slightest risk that a salesperson will start saying stupid shit. 2, you can figure out what tonalities you're going to apply beforehand, which ensures that not only will you sound totally awesome, but you'll be able to take control of your prospect's inner monologue and stop it from narrating against you. 3, you can now be sure that, no matter how nervous you are or how much of a novice you might be, when you open your mouth to speak, the best possible words are going to come out every single time. 4, since your conscious mind no longer has to worry about coming up with the proper words to say, you can now focus the bulk of your attention on how your prospect is reacting to what you say. This will significantly enhance your ability to gauge where your prospect currently is on the certainty scale, as well as alert you to any slip in rapport as a result of something that you said to your prospect that they disagreed with, or that rubbed them the wrong way. 5, it allows you to build the perfect airtight logical case for each of the 3 10s, while ensuring that you follow every straight line presentation rule, which, collectively, have been proven to maximize prospect engagement and increase your closing rate. I'll be going through those shortly. 6, it allows a company's management to systemize its sales force by ensuring that the salespeople are saying exactly the same thing to their prospects, regardless of what region they're in and whether they're selling inside the office or out in the field. This type of uniformity is absolutely crucial when it comes to growing and expanding a company's sales force, and it's the responsibility of the company's sales manager to enforce this. 7, it reduces regulatory problems by preventing a salesperson from exaggerating or making outright false statements. You see, more often than not, a salesperson doesn't purposely lie to a prospect or try to deceive them. The salesperson simply runs out of intelligent things to say, at which point they start saying stupid shit. The problem is that there are actually 2 varieties of stupid shit. The first variety consists of stupid shit that's truthful and accurate, and the second variety consists of stupid shit that is not truthful or accurate, which is to say it's against the laws of God and man, the latter of which can be extremely unforgiving if you're in a regulated industry. Again, these are just a few of the many, many benefits that are automatically enjoyed by any salesperson who uses a straight line script that follows the 8 basic rules for constructing them. But still, in spite of that, and in spite of the countless challenges that consistently pop up when any salesperson, other than a natural-born closer, enters a sales encounter without having the benefit of knowing what they are going to say before they have to say it, there is still an inordinately large number of salespeople who have a major negative anchor toward the use of scripts, ranging in severity from a mild bout of nausea to a full-blown case of an anaphylactic shock. Their negative responses are based on 3 concerns. First, they think that using a script will make them sound wooden and inauthentic, or scripted, as the phrase goes. Second, they think that their prospects will figure out that they're reading from a script and consider it disingenuous or the telltale sign of a novice. And third, they think that using a script is unethical or it lacks integrity because of the contrived nature of a script. On the surface, some of those arguments do seem to make a bit of sense. I mean, if someone were to hand me a script that was written in a way that would make me sound wooden or inauthentic, then I'd be the first one to toss it in the garbage, or, better yet, light the thing on fire and then stomp on it a few times for good measure. In fact, I did that very thing 8 years ago in the offices of a London-based financial services firm that had hired me to teach their sales force the straight line system. At the time, they employed 20 salesmen whose performance was so dismal that the CEO referred to them as the bad news bears of the financial services industry. At the heart of the problem was a horrific telemarketing script that had been written by the company's sales manager, a 30-something dilettante whose own sales ability seemed to begin and end with the line of bullshit he'd been able to sell the CEO regarding his ability to manage a sales force. In any event, the script was about 3 times the size of a standard piece of letter paper, and virtually every inch of it was covered in writing. The words had been chunked into short paragraphs, about 30 of them in all, and the paragraphs were arranged in a series of concentric circles that were connected by arrows of varying lengths and thicknesses. Within 10 seconds, I was 100% certain this particular script was the Biggest piece of shit I'd ever had the displeasure of laying my eyes on, and that's saying a lot when you consider how awful the average non-straight line script is. Anyway, right before we broke for lunch, I called the entire sales force into the training room, including the sales manager, and without any warning or lead-in, I held up the offending item and said, in a tone laced with venom, "You see the script? This is the biggest piece of shit I've ever read through in my entire life. In fact, it's so bad that it's been sucking the life out of you guys, like a killer zombie." I shrugged my shoulders. That's why it needs to be permanently destroyed, with no chance of resurrection. Anyone here know how to permanently kill a zombie? With fire, declared a salesman. You gotta burn it. Exactly, I replied. That's why I brought this. And I reached into a shopping bag that was sitting on the floor beside me and pulled out a handheld blowtorch. That was normally used for firing up a cigar, and I held it up for public inspection. There will be no resurrection, I sputtered, and without saying another word, I held the blowtorch to the edge of the script and pressed the ignition button and set the script ablaze. With great pride, I declared, a script needs to be a perfect straight line, not a circular piece of smeg. I was cut off in mid-sentence by the sight of the flame being unnaturally squelched out. Apparently, the paper had been treated with some kind of fire-resistant coating. Can you believe this shit? I muttered. This script is so cold that it won't even catch fire? With that, I threw the script on the floor and began jumping up and down on it, as the entire room clapped and cheered in approval. Or, should I say, the entire room sans the sales manager. Sensing his impending doom, he had slipped out of the training session while I was trying to torch his script, and he was never seen or heard from again. But nobody cared, least of all the company's CEO, who watched in awe as his sales soared by more than 700% the following month. It was a truly shocking result, here marked in a handwritten thank you note I received from him shortly thereafter. In addition to the note, there was also a hefty bonus check inside the envelope, with a yellow post-it attached to it. It said, "Jay, you deserve every penny of this. Just make sure all Mel gets his cut, too. G.S." The all Mel he was referring to was none other than Mel Gibson, of Braveheart fame, and the specific context he was referring to was a metaphor I had used to explain the relationship between an expertly written straight-line script and mastering the art of reading that script without sounding like you were reading it. Now, I assume you guys have all seen the movie Braveheart, I said to his sales force. Well, you know that scene where the ragged ex-Scottish army is standing there, dressed in their torn-up kilts, holding their pitchforks and axes, and across the field is a massive army of English redcoats who are standing in perfect formation with their archers and heavy horses, and the infantry who are all holding long swords, and it's obvious that the Scots are about to get their asses kicked. You guys all know the scene I'm talking about, right? They all nodded their heads. Great. And then Mel Gibson comes riding up on his horse, with his face all painted blue, and he breaks into that famous speech where he says, "Sons of Scotland, you stand here today in the face of 300 years of oppression and tyranny and blah 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 dot dot dot," and he goes on and on with all this incredibly motivating stuff, talking about how their entire lives have come down to this one moment, and how they have only one shot at freedom, and just like that, they go charging full steam ahead of the English army, and they wipe them out in a matter of minutes. It's an incredible scene, I said confidently, but let me ask you one important question. You think all Mel winged it? In other words, do you think Mel, as the director, said, "Okay, what we are going to do here is line up a couple of thousand extras in that open field over there, and then I'm gonna set up all the cameras in just the right places, and wait for the sun to be at just the right angle, and then right when I give them the cue to flee, I just ride out there on my horse and motivate the hell out of them and convince them to stay, so they can kick some serious redcoat ass"? Now, if any director were to actually do that, just imagine what would come out of Mel Gibson's mouth when he galloped onto the field, especially if he had a couple of drinks in him. But, of course, no director would ever do something so reckless. With only one shot for a character to say exactly the right thing, they ensure their success by hiring an expert screenwriter to come up with the perfect lines for the character to say, and then they hire a world-class actor. Mel didn't have to look far when casting himself, who will not only memorize his lines but also use perfect tonality and body language to bring the scene to life. So, what's the moral of the story? Well, there's actually more than one, but the point I was trying to drive home was that if you're part of that group of salespeople who think that, by their very nature, scripts are going to cause you to sound wooden or inauthentic, making it extremely difficult to get into rapport with your prospects and move them emotionally, then you need to consider one very simple fact, which is, since the time that you were old enough to talk, every single movie or TV show that made you laugh or cry or scream or shout, or that got you so deeply invested in the characters that you ended up binge-watching the entire series in a single weekend, every last one of them was scripted. In fact, even the reality shows you watch, which use the authenticity that supposedly comes from being an unscripted show as a powerful tool to drive viewership, are all scripted. You see, it didn't take long for the producers of these shows to realize that when they didn't hand the reality stars a script of some kind, and they let them wing it. Instead, the end product was so awful and tedious that the show became unwatchable. So if you want to hang on to the false belief that using a script is going to make You sound wooden and inauthentic because sounding wooden and inauthentic is an inherent characteristic of using a script. Then you need to ignore the fact that you spent about half of your life being made to laugh and cry and scream and shout as a result of, yes, you got it, scripts. The key to success here is actually twofold. First, you need to become proficient in the art of reading from a script without sounding like you're reading from a script. And second, you need to become proficient in the art of writing a script that will allow you to sound perfectly natural when you read it. In straight line parlance, we refer to this process as strategic preparation. It's an attitude that borders on over-preparation. In short, the philosophy of strategic preparation is based on anticipating everything that might possibly come up in a sale and having the best possible response to it prepared in advance. In fact, that's what the rest of this chapter is all about, the construction and delivery of a straight line script. So let's start by going through the 8 things that set straight line scripts apart from everything else out there. In essence, these are the key features that must be in place in order for your script to be effective. First, your script must not be front-loaded. Front-loading is when you disclose all your major benefits right up front, which leaves you with nothing powerful to say to change your prospect's mind when they hit you with the first objection. This is one of the biggest mistakes salespeople make. They think they have to mention every single benefit when they make their initial sales presentation. In consequence, they end up with a script that's a mile long, and the prospect is zoned out before they're even halfway through. The key to writing a great script is to frame, not front-load. It's like framing out a new house. You have to do it in stages. First you put up the actual frame, then the drywall, then the paint. It's the same thing with a sale. You can't expect to close so soon. There are going to be objections, so be prepared for a prolonged battle. You have to get your foundation in place first. In essence, human beings are not built in a way where we go from 0 to 100 miles per hour in one shot. There have to be these little stopping off points where we can take a deep breath and consolidate our thoughts. In other words, the way you raise someone's level of certainty is bit by bit. You can't do it all at once. Second, focus on the benefits, not the features. While there's no denying that this is sales 101, for some inexplicable reason, the average salesperson tends to gravitate towards focusing on a product's features, not its benefits. Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that you should never mention a product's features. If you didn't, you would sound totally ridiculous, as you'd just be talking about benefit after benefit after benefit, without providing your prospect with any context for what actually created the benefit. The point is that you want to briefly mention a feature and then expand on the benefit, showing the prospect why it matters to them personally. Remember, people are not so concerned about every feature that a product might have. They want to know if it will make their life easier, or resolve their pain, or allow them to have more time to spend with their family. Third, your script must have stopping off points. If you make a powerful statement, and then another powerful statement, and then yet another powerful statement, by the time you've made the third powerful statement, they've all started to blend in with one another, and they lose their power. This is why a well-written script has an abundance of stopping off points, where the prospect will interact with you and affirm that you're still on the same page. In other words, after you make a powerful statement, you want to lock it down by asking the prospect a simple yes or no question, such as, "You follow me so far? Or make sense? Or are you with me?" By doing this, not only do you keep the prospect engaged in the conversation, but you also get them into the habit of saying yes, which creates consistency. In addition, these little stopping off points serve as periodic report checks. For example, if you say to your prospect, "Makes sense so far?" and they reply yes, then you're in rapport. However, if they reply no, then you're out of rapport, and you can't move forward in the script until you've gotten to the bottom of things. If you do, then your prospect will be thinking, "This guy couldn't care less about what I'm saying. He's just looking to make a commission." So, instead of moving forward, you're going to loop back and give your prospect a little more information that relates to that topic, and then ask them again if things make sense so far. Once they say yes, which they almost always will in this case, you can then safely move forward. Fourth, write in the spoken word, not grammatically correct English. You want to be speaking in a casual manner, using layman's terms, not informal English or using overly technical lingo. In other words, when you read the script, the writing itself should sound totally natural, with the prose written in a manner as if you were speaking to a friend and trying to connect with them emotionally, not just logically. Now, on the flip side, remember that you still have to sound like an expert. So, there's a balance to be struck. It's not all like, "Hey, we are like these, them, dos and don'ts like a Brooklyn guy who's not educated, right?" You still want to sound educated, like an expert, but don't try to talk above your prospect by using too many technical buzz phrases. That's about as surefire of a way I know to get someone to tune out. Rather, you want to use colloquialisms whenever possible, and use contractions to keep your prose sounding natural and snappy. But you can never forget that your commitment to sounding natural is always in the context of being perceived as an expert. Fifth, your script must flow perfectly. When I write a new script, I always go through at least 4 or 5 drafts before I lock in a final version. This gives me a chance to test the script out first by reading and out loud to myself to identify any obvious glitches in the rhythm or flow of the various language patterns. For example, are there any tongue twisters in the prose or sentences that are out of balance in terms of the number of syllables or beats they contain? Are there any awkward transitions that need to be smoothed out? I will then rewrite the script, fixing the glitches I found, and then repeat the process again until I'm absolutely certain that every single word flows like silk. By doing that, I ensure that even a rookie salesperson can use the script and sound totally awesome. To that end, one of the key elements that I always make it a point to focus on very closely is balance, in terms of the number of syllables and the number of beats in each sentence. You see, if a sentence is out of balance, the human ear will immediately sense that something doesn't sound right, and after just a few repetitions, it will tune out. Sixth, your scripts must be honest and ethical. When you're writing your script, you should ask yourself, with every single sentence, is everything I'm saying 100% accurate? Am I coming from a place of integrity? Am I coming from a place of ethics? Or am I starting to exaggerate the facts? Am I misleading people? Am I making any material omissions of fact? I'm the first one to admit that I wrote some scripts back in the early days that I'm not particularly proud of. It's not that they were full of lies, but there were some serious omissions of fact, which ended up painting a very skewed picture of things. So please, for your own sake, I want you to make sure that your scripts are not only 100% accurate, but also come from a place of ethics and integrity. Meaning, you need to have a zero-tolerance policy in place when it comes to things like lying and exaggerating and misleading and omitting, or anything else that wouldn't pass the so-called smell test. In addition, for those of you who are in management, or if you're an owner of the company, always remember that if you hand your sales force a script that's riddled with lies and exaggerations, they will most certainly know it and the consequences will be disastrous. For starters, passing out an unethical script is tantamount to giving your sales force corporate approval to go out and rape and pillage the village. You see, as your salespeople are out there banging away on the phone or knocking on doors in the field, they're lying and exaggerating or omitting key facts every time they make a sales presentation, and it will quickly seep into your entire corporate culture and poison it. In fact, before long, your sales force will spiral completely out of control, making up bolder and bolder lies and wilder exaggerations with each passing day as they become more and more desensitized to their own lack of ethics, which started with you. The bottom line is that you can be half pregnant when it comes to ethics, so any notion you have that you can hand out a deceitful script and not have it ultimately destroy your entire corporate culture is foolish. Your scripts need to be accurate, compliant, and reflective of your corporate culture, which is one of ethics and integrity. And they also need to be sexy as all hell. Remember, these things are not mutually exclusive. Your script can be sexy and compelling and still 100% ethical. To sum it up, your script should be the truth well told. Seventh, remember the overarching equation of energy in benefits out. The moment before a prospect makes a buying decision, they're on a lightning fist equation through their mind that weighs the difference between the total amount of energy they'll have to expend in order to go through the closing process and receive your product against the total value of all the amazing benefits you've promised them, both immediately and in the future. To that end, if the value of the expected benefits exceeds the total projected energy expenditure, then the prospect's brain will issue an all-clear sign and they can then decide whether or not they want to buy. Conversely, if the value of the expected benefits is less than the projected energy expenditure, then a red flag goes up, eliminating any chance of the prospect buying until you've satisfied the equation. The name of this equation is energy in, benefits out, and it comes into play each time you ask for the order, including when you respond to buy signals during the back half of the sale. This principle doesn't even register with the prospect's conscious mind until a microsecond after you've asked for the order, at which point it springs into action, instructing their inner monologue to pose a simple yet very pointed question. Namely, at the end of the day, is it really worth it? In other words, from a sober, logical perspective, is the sum total of all the benefits I expect to receive greater than the sum total of all the energy I'll have to expend in order to receive them? Now, what you need to understand here is that although a positive outcome to this equation doesn't necessarily mean that your prospect will buy, a negative outcome to this equation means that they definitely won't buy. This is not forever, but until you get another chance to ask for the order again, at which point you will adhere to a set of simple yet extremely effective principles that will ensure you end up on the right side of this equation. Let me quickly lay these principles out for you, using our trusted subjects Bill Peterson and John Smith as examples. So let's say Bill Peterson just finished making a kick-ass sales presentation to John Smith, during which he explained to him his product's myriad benefits and why they're a perfect solution to the challenges Mr. Smith is facing, to which Mr. Smith completely agreed, giving Bill all the right signals throughout the entire sales presentation. So, all Bill has to do now is lay out a closing scenario, explaining the various steps that Mr. Smith needs to take to get the ball rolling, and then ask him for the order. To that end, Bill says to Mr. Smith, "Now, John, here's what I need you to do. First, I need you to give me your full name, your social security number, your address, your driver's license number, and then I want you to go to the post office, get a special first-class stamp, then take You're licensed to a copy machine, make a copy of it, then run it over to the notary. And get it notarized, and then run to the bank to get a certified check ... and then, only after Mr. Smith has jumped through a dozen hoops and a ring of fire can he get all the amazing benefits that Bill Peterson promised him that his product would deliver. Obviously, I'm exaggerating a bit here, but not by all that much. Most companies really miss the boat on this one, using closing scenarios that require the prospect to expend so much energy that they've made it close to impossible for them to end up on the right side of this equation. By the way, never forget that money is basically nothing more than stored energy. In essence, you expend energy by engaging in some type of work for which you receive money in return. Now, of course, some of that money ends up being used for basic living expenses, food, shelter, clothing, medical expenses, general bill paying, and the rest of it you deposit in the bank, where it represents stored energy that can be unleashed in any way you wish at a moment's notice. In consequence, when you ask someone to take action and send you their hard-earned money, you're asking them to expend their stored energy, so you want to be sure to offset that energy expenditure by highlighting all the valuable benefits that they're going to receive in return. In essence, you want to crystallize the fact that once they say yes, they're going to receive a massive number of valuable benefits, and the amount of energy they'll have to expend will be considerably lower. By the way, one company that does this just about as well as a company can possibly do it is Amazon. With their one-click buying option, they've made it so ridiculously easy for a customer to receive a product's benefits that you start to feel that it's simply too much of a hassle to buy from anyone else. Even more telling, what Amazon has found is that if their customers are forced to click even one more time to go to a different landing page, they will lose a major percentage of their buyers, and if a customer has to click a third time, their conversion rate drops through the floor. That's how important this equation is to people making a positive buying decision. Let's go back to the example of Bill Peterson and John Smith, except this time, let's change the language pattern to reflect a very different type of closing scenario. Now, John, getting started here is very, very simple. It's just a question of your name, some basic information, and then we handle everything else for you over on this end. And when you combine that with benefit number 1 and benefit number 2 and benefit number 3, then, believe me, John, the only problem you're going to have is that you didn't buy more. Sound fair enough? That's a very low energy and massive benefits out close, and it can be easily adapted to any industry. However, one thing I need to point out is that sometimes you're going to find yourself in a situation where the process or the product you're selling is actually not all that simple to get started. An example might be in banking or mortgages, where there are hoops to jump through and a lot of paperwork. So, while you can't say something is simple when it's actually very complicated, you can still make it clear to your prospect that you will do everything in your power to make the process as simple as possible for them. Now, before we move on, let's quickly go through the process of how to handle buy signals when they arise in the back half of the sale. In other words, as your prospect starts to become more and more certain about the 310s, they will start sending you signals that they are interested in buying, in the form of leading questions about the closing process. For example, the prospect might say, "How much did you say it would run me?" Or, "How long will it take until I receive the product?" Or, "How long until I start to see results?" Those are just a few examples of the more common buy signals. Let's say you've already asked for the order for the first time and you're in the middle of running a looping pattern, and your prospect suddenly asks, "What was the price on that again?" To which you reply, "Oh, it's only $3,000. And you say no more. Alas, you just committed sales harakiri. Why? Simply put, you've just created a scenario where there's $3,000 worth of energy going in and zero benefits coming out, not because those benefits don't exist in point of fact, they do, but because you simply forgot to remind the prospect of them at the same time you ask them to tap into their energy reserves. In other words, the fact that you laid out the benefits 3 or 4 minutes ago, when you asked for the order for the first time, has no bearing on the energy in benefits out equation a few minutes later, when your prospect gave you a buy signal. Put another way, human beings have extremely short memories when it comes to the balancing effect of benefits. In consequence, you need to restate those benefits again, albeit more quickly and succinctly, but you still need to state them every time you bring up the expenditure of energy. To that end, the proper way to have responded to the buy signal, "What was the price on that again?" is as follows. It's a cash outlay of only $3,000, and let me quickly tell you exactly what you're going to get for that. You're going to get benefit number 1 and benefit number 2 and benefit number 3, and again, like I said before, getting started is very, very simple, so believe me, if you do even half as well as the rest of my clients in this program, then the only problem you'll have is that I didn't call you 6 months ago and get you started then. Sound fair enough? And that's how you close. I use the word cash outlay as a reframer. Instead of cost, I use the word only as a minimizer in relation to the $3,000. I then quickly reminded the prospect of 3 major benefits to balance out the $3,000 energy expenditure, and then I reiterated the simplicity of getting started and transitioned into a soft close, using my tritonal pattern of absolute certainty, collapsing into utter sincerity, and then moving into the reasonable man tone as I said my last 3 words. Sound fair enough? Then I shut up. And eighth, a straight line script is part of a series of scripts. In fact, there might be as many as 5 or 6 different scripts that take you through from the open to the close. For example, you'll have a script that starts with those all-important first 4 seconds and then includes your qualifying questions and your transition. Second, you have a script that starts with the main body of your presentation and ends with you asking for the order for the first time. Third, you have a series of rebuttal scripts that include the well-thought-out answers you've prepared to the various common objections you're going to hear. And fourth, you have a series of looping scripts that will include the various language patterns that will allow you to loop back into the sale in order to move your prospect to higher and higher levels of certainty. This leads us to an extremely important aspect of the sales process that's going to have a major impact on how you construct and deliver each of the above scripts in terms of their length, their breadth, and how much time you have to spend repeating yourself in order to refresh your prospect's recollection. What I'm referring to here is the issue of the type of call system you're using, meaning, how many times do you plan on speaking to your prospect before you ask them the first time for the order? Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times? Whichever the case, the logic behind using a sales system with 2 or more calls is that each prior call, whether it's in person or over the phone, serves as a springboard for entering the next call in a tighter state of rapport and with greater insight into the prospect's needs and pain points as a result of the intelligence you gathered on the previous calls, and it's given the prospect a chance to review whatever documents or links you sent, or to do his or her own research in order to increase their level of certainty about each of the 3 tens. To that end, there isn't much you can do on 3 calls that you couldn't have done on 2, so whenever I consult for a company that's using a 3-call system, I always make them at least test a 2-call system, in conjunction, of course, with teaching them the rest of the straight line system, which is what I was hired to do in the first place. And in the end, rare indeed are the tests that don't prove the benefits of using the 2-call system, if for no other reason than how difficult it is to get in touch with same prospects 3 times within the confines of the outer limits of your sales cycle. In other words, every product or service will have its own predetermined sales cycle that has a set number of days between calls. At a certain point, when a prospect has exceeded the outer limit for the number of days between calls, the lead goes into a dead pile, which eventually gets redistributed to someone else in the sales force after the appropriate amount of time, usually 3 to 6 months, or maybe even a year. Any longer than that and the close rate drop becomes negligible. This circumvents the self-defeating behavior of chasing after the same prospect again and again, which is par for the course for a non-straight line salesperson, even after it would be painfully obvious to any other human being that the prospect is ducking their call when it pops up on the prospect's caller ID. The same goes for a 4-call system, although they're so counterintuitive, even to a poorly trained sales manager, that whenever I do run into one, there's usually a valid reason why the sale has been dragged out. Most of the time, it has to do with the reality of having to deal with multiple decision makers, which causes a salesperson to have to work their way up the ladder, closing one decision maker at a time, until eventually getting the final decision maker to sign off on the deal. The other common reason is a particular product requiring that the buyer commit a significant amount of their own resources, either time, money, manpower, or all 3, to integrate the new product into their current business. So, before they sign on the dotted line, there's a significant amount of forethought and strategic planning required. For example, in a 4-call system, a successful outcome for the 3rd call might be your prospect agreeing to sign a letter of intent and, in the cases where it's necessary, a non-disclosure agreement, so the prospect and their team can take a closer look at the inner workings of your product, a process formerly known as due diligence, to make sure that it's everything you've cracked it up to be. In addition, this is also the point in the sale where lawyers from both sides tend to get involved, going back and forth as they review each other's changes, as they take what started off as a simple, straightforward agreement and complicate it to the point of madness while racking up massive legal fees in the process. Now, to be clear, while most lawyers are reasonably honest, there are still a lot of chronic overbillers out there, so be careful, especially if your commission is tied to the overall profitability of the deal. If that's the case, then you definitely want to make sure that someone competent goes through every invoice with a fine-tooth comb and negotiates out anything that looks even slightly suspicious, because this is definitely one of those cases where if there's smoke, there's fire. Anyway, moving along, once your prospect's team has given the thumbs up from their due diligence and the lawyers have extracted the appropriate amount of flesh from everyone's bones, then you have the chance to truly close the deal, which usually entails the signing of a definitive agreement or contract and the exchange of a predetermined amount of money. The most important thing to remember throughout this entire process is that until a definitive agreement gets signed and money changes hands, the deal is not closed, which means you need to keep in touch with the prospect and do whatever you can to keep the 3 tens at the highest level possible. This includes sending your prospect testimonials from other satisfied clients, articles from trade journals, newspapers, and magazines that reinforce the idea that the prospect made the right decision, and occasional emails and regular schmooze calls to make sure that you stay in tight rapport as the process drags on. I cannot overestimate how dramatically this will reduce the number of deals that end up falling out of bed during the waiting period, and while it usually takes Anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to complete the process. It can drag on for up to 3 months if those special types of lawyers are involved and the prospect isn't under any time pressure to close the deal. Nonetheless, as long as you continue to keep your prospect's level of certainty as high as possible, then things should end up okay, and you'll close the majority of deals that make it this far and get your commission, which had better be substantial, considering how long the deal took and all the trouble you had to go through to get it to actually close. Just how substantial is impossible to say without knowing all the details, but suffice to say that if your commission is not in the thousands of dollars for a deal that took 6 months to close, then you better be getting a hefty base salary to make up for it. But again, there are simply too many variables in play: the country you live in, what's considered normal in the industry, your opportunity for advancement within the company you work for, how much enjoyment you get out of what you're doing. For me to give you an answer on compensation, that's anything more than an educated guess. More importantly, though, you need to make sure that during the waiting period all your communications to your almost new client come from a position of strength, meaning that, as far as you're concerned, the deal is already closed and the communication you're sending is from the perspective of building a long-term relationship and doing more business in the future. Otherwise, you'll come off as being desperate, and it will end up having the reverse effect. But other than those two examples, anything more than a 3-call system will be the result of a flawed sales process being administered by an equally flawed sales manager who's sitting idly by and watching a team of what are always inexperienced salespeople banging their heads against the wall, trying to get through to the same person 4 times before they get around to asking for the order. After all, if there was anyone experienced on the sales force, they would first suggest, and then ultimately demand, that they be allowed to collapse the number of calls to 3 or less, and just so you're aware, that demand is almost always accompanied by a Salesforce-wide revolt led by the experienced salesperson who is preying on the cloud of desperation that hangs over an underperforming sales force like sarin gas, poisoning their hearts and minds and breaking their collective spirit. In light of that, whether you're the owner, the sales manager, or just a salesperson in the sales force, you need to pay extremely close attention to the number of calls in your sales cycle, with an eye toward collapsing it to as few calls as possible. The way to safely and effectively do this is to eliminate 1 call from the cycle at a time until you've reached the point where a decrease in your percentage closing rate isn't offset by a greater number of total closed deals due to the large increase in the number of sales calls made to close deals, as opposed to setting up the next call. The power of language patterns. As I explained in Chapter 2, the straight line is basically a visual representation of the perfect sale, where everything you say and everything you do and every case you make as to why your prospect should buy from you is met with an unequivocal yes from the prospect, right up to the moment where you ask them for the order, and they agree to close. In addition, every word that escapes your lips has been specifically designed to feed into one overarching goal, which is to increase your prospect's level of certainty. For each of the 3 tens to the highest level possible, a 10 on the certainty scale. Now, in terms of the order in which you go about creating certainty, you're always going to follow the same protocol, which is the product first, you, the salesperson, second, and the company that stands behind the product third. In terms of the split between logic and emotion, you're always going to build airtight logical cases first and airtight emotional cases second. Why? Quite simply, by making the airtight logical case first, you satisfy your prospect's bullshit detector, which then frees them up to be moved emotionally. The way you're going to accomplish this is through a series of expertly constructed straight-line scripts, ensuring that you know exactly what to say before you have to say it, and embedded in these scripts are going to be language patterns, which are bite-sized chunks of expertly crafted information, each of which has a specific goal in mind. For example, there are patterns designed to create logical certainty, and there are patterns designed to create emotional certainty. There are patterns designed to create certainty for each of the 3 tens, and there is a pattern to lower someone's action threshold and one to add on pain. In short, there is a pattern for everything. In the front half of the sale, your language patterns serve as anchors for each step of the syntax, and they're an important aspect of ensuring a successful outcome. In the back half of the sale, your language patterns serve as the very foundation for the entire looping process, and everything you say will revolve around them. In your opening pattern, you're simply introducing yourself, your company, and explaining the reason for your call, while using tonality and body language to establish yourself as an expert, so you can take control of the conversation and begin moving your prospect down the straight line, from the open to the close. Here are the basic rules for creating a powerful introduction. We'll assume an outbound phone call. Be enthusiastic right from the start. Always speak in the familiar. For example, you wouldn't say, "Hi, is Mr. Jones there?" You would say, "Hi, is John there?" Introduce yourself and your company in the first couple of sentences, and then restate the name of your company a second time within the first couple of sentences. Use power words like dramatically explosive, fastest growing, most well respected. Power words go a very long way to capturing someone's attention and establishing yourself as an expert. Use your justifiers. I went through these in Chapter 10. Ask for permission to begin the qualification process. Your next pattern is going to allow you to smoothly transition into the intelligence gathering phase, and it will include asking your prospect for permission to ask questions, as well as all the questions you intend on asking your prospect, laid out in exactly the right order, with notations attached that indicate which tonality will be applied in order to ensure that you get the most comprehensive response. And, of course, at the same time, you'll make it a point to be actively listening to each of your prospects' responses to ensure that you are building massive rapport on both a conscious and unconscious level. Here are some sample big picture questions that can be used in virtually any industry. What do you like or dislike about your current supplier? Typically, a prospect will have a current source or be using a similar product already, and you aren't the first person to try to sell them a new product of this nature. This is a very powerful question. What is your biggest headache with your business? You have to be very careful with your tonality here, as this is your first direct attempt at identifying your prospect's pain. For example, if you flippantly say, "So, John, what's your biggest headache with this? Come on, tell me," it says that you don't give a shit. The proper tonality here should convey sincerity, concern, and a desire to help resolve John's pain, and when he starts talking about it, you want to amplify that pain by asking the following questions. How long has this been going on? Do you see this getting better or worse? How do you see yourself in 2 years? How has it affected your health or your family? In essence, you want to make sure that you make your prospect talk about their pain. These types of questions will have a powerful impact on opening the prospect's mind to receiving information, which they will now measure against their pain. What would be your ideal program if you could design it? Now, this question works extremely well in some industries and doesn't apply to others. The key here is to use a logic-based tonality, as if you were a scientist talking, versus a tonality of empathy. Of all the factors that we have just spoken about, what is the most important to you? You definitely want to find out your prospect's highest need, as this is the one that you'll typically have to fill to push the prospect over the top. Have I asked about everything that's important to you? Your customer will think more of you, not less of you, if you ask this, so long as you have done a professional job up to that point. You could also say, is there anything that I have missed? Is there any way that I can tailor the solution for you? This takes us to the end of your introduction, where you'll transition into the main body of your sales presentation, so let's do a quick recap of the various language patterns. 1. When you introduce yourself, remember to speak in the familiar, and 2. Always sound upbeat and enthusiastic. 2. The next pattern is going to be to get their response of "I'm okay." If you recall, we met last Thursday night at the Marriott, or if you recall, you sent in a postcard a few weeks back, or we've been reaching out to people in your area. In short, you are trying to link up this call with the time you first met your prospect, or when they took an action, like filling out a postcard or clicking on a website. 3. This next pattern is extremely important and is the reason for the call, your justifier. In essence, your justifier creates a valid reason to be calling today, and it will dramatically increase your compliance rate. 4. From here you get into the qualifying portion of your script, and you start by asking for permission to ask questions. This is another example of using a justifier, this time with the word "so." Just a couple of quick questions so I don't waste your time. This gives a reason why you need to ask the prospect questions, and that reason is so you don't waste their time. You always want to ask for permission to qualify. 5. The last part of your open is always a transition. Based on everything you said to me, this is a perfect fit for you. This should be an anchor for you. You should know it by heart. When it comes to the main body of your presentation, I can't give you exact language patterns, as they vary too greatly from industry to industry. However, that being said, when I'm hired by a company to do a sales training, I make each salesperson create 3 or 4 language patterns for each of the 3 10s, and then I pull them all together and pick the best of the patterns to create one master script. If possible, I strongly recommend that you do that yourself, recruiting other salespeople in your office to go through this exercise with you as a group. To that end, let me give you a head start by providing you with a handful of powerful tips and guidelines for creating language patterns for the body and the close. 1. The moment you finish the above transition, your first words in the main body should be the exact name of your product, process, program, or service you're offering. Here's an example of this that I wrote for the movie The Wolf of Wall Street. Name of the company: Aerotine International. It's a cutting-edge, high-tech firm out of the Midwest, awaiting imminent patent approval on a next generation of radar detectors that have both huge military and civilian applications. 2. The next language pattern should be no more than 1 or 2 paragraphs, and be focused on a benefit that directly fills the client's need. Only mention that feature. If possible, try to use comparisons and metaphors to illustrate your point, as they are far more effective than facts and figures alone. In addition, if you can ethically link the above pattern to a trustworthy person or institution, like a Warren Buffett or JP Morgan, then do it. Also, check to see if your company knows of any high-profile people who have used your product and liked it. The bottom line is that anytime you can leverage the credibility of a respected person or institution, you should try to bring it into your presentation. 3. After you're done with the pattern, you should say, "You follow me so far?" Or "Make sense?" You can only move forward after the prospect says yes. Otherwise you'll break rapport and enter the death zone. But once they agree, With you, boom, you've completed one full language pattern. 4. Now, repeat steps 2 and 3 one more time and then one more time. Again, but no more than that, or you'll run the risk of overwhelming the client. Always remember, you're framing, not front-loading. 5. As you're transitioning into your close, you should try to create some type of urgency, meaning why the customer needs to buy now. If you're in an industry where there's not a lot of inherent urgency, then try to at least use tonal scarcity to imply urgency, but don't create false urgency. That's not okay. 6. Moving from the main body to the close, we start with a transitional pattern. That explains how simple it is to get the buying process started. This is your energy in, benefits out equation. 7. Then you directly ask for the order, with no beating around the bush. The reason I'm highlighting this is that after spending the last 10 years training sales forces all around the world, I've found that the vast majority of salespeople don't ask for the order very much. Either they dance around it, or they leave it open-ended, as if they're hoping the prospect will just come right out and say they want to buy it. In point of fact, most studies peg the optimum number of times that a salesperson should ask for the order as somewhere between 5 and 7 times. Personally, however, I strongly disagree, and I think that number has more to do with poorly trained salespeople going through the closing process in a wildly inefficient way. 3 or 4 times should be more than enough when you're using the straight line system. Remember, this is not about pressuring people into making bad decisions. This is about using the straight line system to create massive certainty in the mind of your prospect on both a logical and emotional level, and then asking for the order in a low-pressure, graceful way. Here's a typical language pattern for a close. Give me one shot, and believe me, if I'm even half right, the only problem you'll have is that I didn't call you 6 months ago and get you started then. Sound fair enough? So, there you have it, the basic framework for constructing world-class scripts that set you up to close a massive number of deals. Once you've gone through the script building process and you've finalized your draft, there are only 2 things left to do: training and drilling. I can't even begin to tell you how massive the payoff will be if you take the time to read your script out loud and keep practicing and practicing until you get to a level of unconscious competence where you literally know your script by heart. Now, I don't expect you to get this perfect the first time out, but what I will tell you is that script writing has a very strong good enough factor, which means that even if you're just okay at writing scripts, it will still dramatically increase your closing rate. To that end, one question I always get asked is, when should I use my script? And my answer to that is, always. You should always use a script, whether you're selling in person or on the phone. How do you use a script in person? You're wondering. Very simple, you have it memorized. Like I said, I want to know my script so well that I move past the point of the actual words. Remember, 10% of human communication is words, the other 90% is tonality and body language. By memorizing my script, I free up my conscious mind to focus on the 90%. So I urge you to keep reading your scripts back to yourself to make sure all the language patterns and transitions are absolutely seamless. It takes a promise you that it's well worth it. 12. The art and science of looping. Since the day I invented the straight line system, one of the core principles that I've been drilling into the hearts and minds of all the people I've trained is that the sale doesn't truly begin until after your prospect hits you with the first objection. Only then do you have the chance to finally roll up your sleeves and earn your paycheck. To that end, regardless of what product you're selling, there are only 3 possible ways that your prospect can respond the first time you ask them for the order. They can say yes, meaning the deal is closed and it's time to break out the paperwork and collect payment. In essence, these are the laydown sales that I spoke about in Chapter 2, where the prospects are basically pre-sold before they enter the sales encounter. As salespeople, we love getting them, but from a practical standpoint, they're far too rare to put any stock in them as an expected outcome. The key here is to manage your expectations. You want to appreciate laydowns when they come, without ever expecting them to come. This ensures that you'll enter the back half of the sale with the same level of certainty and with the same positive mindset that you had when you entered the front half of the sale. No, meaning, the prospect is definitely not interested, and it's time to end the sales encounter and move on to the next prospect. Now, in reality, if you've been correctly following the steps in the straight line syntax, then you should almost never get hit with an outright "I'm not interested" at this point in the sale. After all, you will have already weeded out the prospects who indicated that during the intelligence gathering phase. In other words, the only prospects you should be presenting to at this point are those whose answers to your intelligence gathering questions dictated that they not only were interested in your product, but also needed your product and could afford your product. So it completely defies logic that someone who ticked all those boxes would suddenly do a complete 180 after you just presented them with a series of benefits that were a perfect match for them. In terms of the exact percentages, you shouldn't expect to get hit with a flat out no more than 1 or 2% of the time, which is right on par with your laydowns. Or maybe, meaning the prospect is sitting on the fence and can still go either way. Maybe consists of all the common objections that salespeople typically get hit with during the back half of the sale. In total, there are somewhere between 12 and 14 of them, although about half are just simple variations of 2. I've already listed them in Chapter 2, but for the sake of convenience, and also to refresh your recollection, here are the most common ones again. Let me think about it, let me call you back, send me some information. I'm not liquid right now, I have another source or supplier or broker I work with. It's a bad time of year, including it's tax time, it's summer vacation time, it's Christmas time, it's the end of our fiscal year, and I need to speak to someone else. Which includes my spouse, my lawyer, my accountant, my business partner, my financial advisor. The art of deflection. Let's say you're a stockbroker cold calling wealthy investors, trying to persuade them to open up a new account at your brokerage firm, XYZ Securities. The stock that you're recommending as an opening trade is Microsoft, which is currently trading at $30 per share, and the firm minimum for opening up a new account is $3,000 or 100 shares of Microsoft. Using a standard 2-call system, your closing rate is 30%, meaning you close 3 out of every 10 prospects who you can get on the phone a second time. And 90% of that 30% end up buying after your third or fourth time asking for the order. From start to finish, it takes you approximately 3 minutes to go through the front half of the sale and between 10 and 15 minutes to go through the back half of the sale, and while the front half of the sale might strike you as being unusually short, what you need to remember here is that, with a 2-call system, virtually all of your intelligence gathering and initial rapport building gets completed on the first call, giving you a significant head start on the second call. That is not to say that you don't have to spend at least some amount of time re-engaging your prospect when you begin the second call, but that entire process should take no more than a minute, as opposed to the 5 to 7 minutes it takes to complete an initial call. Specifically, the re-engagement process consists of you leading your prospect, Bill Peterson, through the following steps. 1. Start your introduction by greeting Bill by his first name, and then quickly reintroduce yourself stating your first and last name, the name of your company, and its location, and ask Bill how he's doing today. Remember, from your very first word, your tonality must be positive and upbeat, with a hint of bottled enthusiasm slipping out around the edges, to remind him that you two spoke a few days or a few weeks ago, and that you emailed him a bit of information on your company. Do not, I repeat, do not ask him if he actually received the information or had a chance to review it, as there's an excellent possibility that he'll say no to at least one of those questions, which gives him an easy exit ramp out of the encounter. The way to avoid this is to simply ask him if the conversation rings a bell, to which he will almost always reply with a yes. 3. Once he does, then briefly explain to him how the last time you spoke, he ask you to give him a call the next time an extraordinary investment idea came across your desk. 4. If he replies no, then act a bit surprised, but chalk it up to the fact that he must get a ton of calls and emails each day, and then assure him that you did in fact speak to him, and that you did in fact email him some information, but there's no need to worry, as it was just a bit of background on your company. Then complete step 3, reminding him that he asked you to call him the next time you had an investment idea. 5. Explain how something just came across your desk, and that it's one of the best things you've seen in quite some time now, and if he has 60 seconds, you'd like to share the idea with him. 6. Complete your introduction by saying, "Got a minute?" using the reasonable man tone. Here is how the re-engagement process looks in script form, showing a prospect's typical responses as well. You: "Hi, is Bill there?" Your prospect: "Yeah, this is Bill." You: "Hey Bill, it's John Smith, calling from XYZ Securities on Wall Street. How you doing today?" Your prospect: "I'm okay." You: "Okay, great. Now, Bill, if you recall, we spoke a few weeks back, and I emailed you a bit of information on my company, XYZ Securities, along with some links to a few of our recent stock recommendations. Does that ring a bell?" Your prospect: "Yeah, I think so." You: "Okay, great. Now, Bill, the last time we spoke, I promised to get back to you when I came across an investment idea that had huge upside potential, with very little downside risk. Well, the reason for the call today is that something just came across my desk, and it's perhaps the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. If you have 60 seconds, I'd like to share the idea with you. You got a minute?" And that's it. From there, you're going to smoothly transition into the main body of your presentation, adhering to the rules and guidelines laid out in the previous chapter on script building, and then you'll close out the front half of the sale by directly asking for the order for the first time, in no uncertain terms, meaning there's no beating around the bush. You're kind of asking for the order, you're flat out asking for it, saying something along the lines of, "Bill, here's what I want you to do. Pick up a block of 10,000 shares of Microsoft at $30 a share. It's a cash outlay of $300,000, or half that on margin. And then complete your closing pattern." Now, in reality, this is a far bigger investment than you expect your prospect to ultimately make. However, by asking for such a large commitment on the first go-round, you now have the opportunity to incrementally lower that amount with each new closing attempt, timing the reduction so that, on your final closing attempt, you're asking your prospect for the firm's minimum commitment for opening a new account. In general sales parlance, we refer to this strategy as a step-down sale, and it can be a powerful closing tool for products where you can easily ratchet up or ratchet down the amount of the purchase. For example, in Bill's case, when you ask him for the order for the second time, you would step him down from 10,000 shares to 5,000 shares, which reduces the energy and aspect of the closing equation by 50% after you just increase the benefits outside of the equation during your follow-up presentation. This creates an extremely powerful 1-2 punch that will significantly increase your closing rate. And, of course, on your third closing attempt, you would step down to 1,000 shares ... and then down to 500 shares on your fourth attempt, going all the way down to whatever the firm's minimum is for opening up a new account. Now, remember, on your initial closing attempt, you fully expect to be hit with one of the common objections, so your inner monologue should be saying, just as expected, a smokescreen for uncertainty. It's time to roll up my sleeves and earn my paycheck. In terms of which objection your prospect chooses, it doesn't even matter, because you're going to respond to all the common objections in exactly the same way. For example, let's say Bill replies, "It sounds interesting. Let me think about it." To that, you'll answer with the standard straight line response to an initial objection, which is, "I hear what you're saying, Bill, but let me ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea?" Similarly, if Bill had said, "I need to speak to my accountant," then you would have said, "I hear what you're saying, Bill, but let me ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea?" And once again, if he had said, "It's a bad time of year," then you would have said, "I hear what you're saying, Bill, but let me just ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea?" In other words, no matter which of the 12 to 14 common objections your prospect initially hits you with, you are always going to answer in exactly the same way. You're going to say, "I hear what you're saying, Bill, but let me ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea?" Now, notice how, rather than directly answering his objection, you deflected it. Instead, specifically, you acknowledge the fact that you heard what Bill said to you to ensure that he didn't feel ignored, which would cause a break in rapport, and then you shifted the conversation in a more productive direction, which was to find out where he stood on the certainty scale for the first of the 3 tens, which is your product. In straight line parlance, we refer to this process as deflection, and it comprises step number 6 of the straight line syntax. In essence, when you deflect a prospect's initial objection, you're avoiding answering it head-on by using a 2-step process. Step 1 consists of a simple 5-word language pattern, "I hear what you're saying," which you've infused with the reasonable man tonality. II. Your words let the prospect know that you've heard his objection, and, hence, you're not ignoring him, and your tonality lets the prospect know that you fully respect his right to feel that way, which ensures that you remain in very tight rapport. Step 2 consists of another simple language pattern, "Let me ask you a question. Does the idea make sense to you? Do you like the idea?" which you've infused with the money aside tonality. So, again, your words are redirecting the conversation to a far more productive track, which, in this particular case, is to ascertain Bill's current level of certainty about Microsoft being a good buy right now, and your tonality ensures that he doesn't feel pressured by your question, that if he admits that he likes your product, you're not going to use his admission against him to pressure him to buy. After all, if he feels that way, then you'll significantly tone down his level of enthusiasm as he responds, which is the last thing you want your prospect to be doing at this point. Why? Well, quite simply, while a basic yes is enough to move forward during the front half of the sale, you need an enthusiastic yes to move forward during the back half of the sale. The reason for this is that the level of enthusiasm of your prospect's yes is going to serve as your primary means for measuring his level of certainty for each of the 3 tens. For example, suppose that, in response to deflecting Bill's initial objection, he replied in an ambivalent tone, "Yeah, it sounds pretty good." Now, here's a very important question. Where does Bill's response, including his ambivalent tone, place him on the certainty scale? Is he at a 3, a 5, a 9, a 10? Well, he's clearly not at a 10, right? After all, when your prospect is at a 10, you'll definitely know it. His response will sound something like this: "Oh, yeah, absolutely. It makes total sense to me. I love the idea." In essence, his positive bias will be so strong that his words and his tonality are dead giveaways for his ultra-high level of certainty. The same is true of a 1 on the certainty scale, albeit in the exact opposite direction. His response, in this case, will sound something like this: "No, not at all. I think it's one of the stupidest ideas I've ever heard," and his tone will be one of utter disgust. While the levels in between are a bit more challenging to hit on the nose, he's clearly not at a 2 or a 3, as either one has far more negative emotion attached to its response than Bill's did. Conversely, he's clearly not at an 8 or a 9, as either of those levels has far more positive emotion attached. So, where is he, then? Where is Bill on the certainty scale based on his response? Well, I wasn't kidding when I said it's a bit harder to hit those middle levels directly on the nose, but still, based on his words and their accompanying tonality, I would say he's somewhere around a 5 or a 6, although maybe he's at a 4, but probably not, due to the nature of his ambivalence, which strikes me as being slightly more positive than negative. So, based on that, and based on my years of experience at estimating my prospects' varying levels of certainty, if I had to choose one number, I would place Bill at a 6 as opposed to a 5, although either choice won't affect the outcome. Now, I just gave you a purposely verbose explanation to drive home a very important point, namely, that looping is as much an art as it is a science, so there's no need to make yourself crazy trying to figure out your prospect's exact level of certainty based on his response. As long as you can discern his approximate level of certainty, then you have enough information to determine if you can safely move forward towards the close, or if you need to loop back to the front half of the sale to increase your prospect's level of certainty. So, that being said, given the fact that I pegged Bill's response at a 6 on the certainty scale, does it make sense for you to move forward on the straight line towards the close? The answer is no, absolutely not. A 6 is not nearly high enough on the certainty scale for Bill or, for that matter, any of your prospects to seriously consider parting with their hard-earned money to buy something, and that's true whether they're buying $300,000 of Microsoft stock, or $500 of a penny stock, a $120,000 2017 Mercedes-Benz or a $500 10-speed bicycle, a $90,000 state-of-the-art home theater system or a $399 42-inch flat-screen TV, a $75,000 fast food franchise or a $997 home study course for the straight-line system. So, rather than moving forward and trying to close the deal, you're going to loop back to the front half of the sale instead to the point on the straight line when you had just finished delivering the main body of your straight line sales presentation and make a follow-up presentation that builds on the airtight logical case that you framed during your initial presentation. In essence, your follow-up presentation picks up right where your logical frame left off, using your most powerful benefits and coherent assertions to turn the frame into an irrefutable integrable scream from the hilltop's airtight logical case, while you use the advanced tonality technique of pace, lead to start building emotional certainty as well. With this one particular pattern, you're going to accomplish two crucial outcomes simultaneously. First, you're looking to increase your prospect's level of logical certainty to as close to a 10 as possible, and second, you're looking to begin the process of increasing your prospect's level of emotional certainty to as close to a 10 as possible. Let's go through these processes step by step, starting with Bill's response, which landed him at a 6 on the logical certainty scale due to its ambivalent tone. Specifically, Bill said, "Yeah, it sounds pretty good." To that, your standard straight line response will be, "Exactly, it really is a great buy down here. In fact, one of the true beauties here is ... and then you'll go directly into the main body of your follow-up presentation. Similarly, if your prospect had said, "I guess so, it sounds okay," in the sort of dismissive tone that would have placed him at a 4 on the certainty scale, then you would say, "Exactly, it really is a great buy down here. In fact, one of the true beauties here is ... And once again, if he'd said, "Absolutely, it sounds like a great investment in..." the sort of enthusiastic tone that would have placed him at an 8 or even a 9 on the certainty scale, then you would say, "Exactly, it really is a great buy down at this level. In fact, one of the true beauties here is ... In essence, just like the process of deflection, no matter how your prospect answers, and no matter where that answer lands him on the certainty scale, you're always going to respond with the exact same words. What's going to change, however, is your tonality. Let me quickly explain. Remember the story I told you about my son, Carter, being upset after soccer practice, and how I was able to quickly calm him down by using the tonal strategy of pace, lead? Well, that's exactly what you're going to do now, starting with the strategy's first step, which is to enter your prospect's world where he is, and then you'll pace him, and you'll pace him, and then you'll lead him in the direction that you want.